Welcome to the conversation. I'm your host, Benjamin Dixon. I'm pleased to be joined this afternoon by Charles F. Coleman Jr. He is a civil rights attorney and quickly emerged as one of the strongest thought leaders and modern voices in today's conversation on race, law, culture, and politics. Charles, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
Thanks for having me, Ben. Glad to be here. Appreciate it.
The pleasure is ours. We have our eyes on the Derek Chauvin trial, the cop who is on trial for the murder of George Floyd. And we wanted to get some of your insights into how it's proceeding and some of the things that we can have an expectation of.
Well, Ben, the biggest part of where we are now in terms of the challenges around the trial is actually getting the trial started. The jury selection for this case is taking an inordinate amount of time. And with a case like this, I shouldn't even use the word inordinate because it's almost to be expected that it's going to be difficult, that with a case that had such rippling implications and impact globally, that they would have a challenge finding a jury panel or impaneling a jury that would be fair and impartial in terms of the facts. I mean, this is something that even if you didn't know the ins and the outs of the case, it's likely that you heard something about it or you saw a video or there was some sort of exposure that you may have had to it. So with that being the case, it's difficult not to have jurors who have been predisposed to some opinion on their behalf around what this case is looking like and what it's about. And so that's really been the biggest challenge. In fact, there were two jurors who were dismissed today because of the fact that the $27 million settlement by the city and being awarded to the victim's family was something that they felt had influenced them. And so it was an argument being made by Chauvin's counsel, and which was ultimately accepted by the judge, that these two new jurors who had been selected would need to be dismissed because of the fact that, given this settlement, they would be influenced. And that's going to, I think, have an impact on them being able to get a jury. I think that, quite frankly, that was probably the biggest hurdle that they had, aside from maybe, the actual footage of Chauvin coming into evidence. Other than that, I think the biggest challenge that they're going to have from a prosecutorial standpoint, or just in terms of trying the case in general, is going to be their ability to find fair and impartial jurors.
And and we've seen this before in other trials that are like high profile. What is the usual process in general when the situation is like this? Do they actually expect to be able to find people who are quote unquote fair and impartial, considering how saturated this case really is, or this issue was throughout the summer and to this day?
Well, the issue isn't necessarily a matter of whether they don't know anything about the case or whether they are not familiar or are familiar with the facts or what they believe to be the facts. The issue is, are you able to approach hearing the facts in the law from an unbiased place? Like, that's the real question. The question isn't, have you been on a rock for the past 12 months where you don't know that this has happened? Right? That's unrealistic. And so judges and attorneys know that. We understand that. The bigger question is basically, are you so influenced and so biased that even as the judge may give you and instruct you on the law, that you're unable to listen to them and appreciate what you're being asked to do in this case, as opposed to bringing your personal feelings into it? And I think that is a much more reasonable ask. I mean, you're not going to find too many people who are going to be able to say that they know nothing about George Floyd, that they know nothing about the civil unrest which occurred in response to his death. But the question is going to be, are you able to be fair and impartial in this matter? Are you able to listen to the judge in terms of his instructions to you on the law? Are you able to be a fact finder in this case around these facts, not necessarily bringing your personal feelings into the case? And I think, like I said, that is a more reasonable ask. It's not necessarily a simple one, but in terms of the notion of it does beat the idea of, well, you can't know anything about the case. You can't have read any articles or anything like that, because that simply just would be too tall an ask and too tall an order for a case like this.
So let's talk about that process of striking jurors. What goes into the attorneys coming to the conclusion that a potential juror cannot be unbiased. I don't imagine that a lot of jurors are getting up there, potential jurors are getting up there and just outright saying that I'm going to be unbiased. Tell us what that process is like.
Sure. So when you voir dire for a jury panel, what you're doing is you're asking them regular questions, or the judge will ask them questions. In some jurisdictions, the attorneys are allowed to do it, where you will ask them a series of questions and try to ascertain in a matter of, moments based off of their answer, whether you think they're a good fit for this case. So, for example, you may want to know whether the members of the jury are related to police officers, whether they have police in their family, whether they have any negative experiences with police officers, things like that. And so as each attorney, both for the prosecution and for the defense, you get a certain number of what are called preemptive strikes, which is basically, I'm striking you because I don't think you'll be a good fit for my case, and you don't give me good vibes, and I don't want to do that, versus strikes for cause. And when you bring up a challenge for cause, what you are saying is, based off of what they said, Judge, I don't think that this person can be fair and impartial. So preemptive, you really don't need a reason for those. You get a certain number of those, but cause strikes are unlimited, because cause strikes basically suggest that there is a legitimate reason that this person should not serve on this jury. It's not about my preference. It's not about what I think would be ideal. This person should not serve on this jury because something about what they've said indicates that they cannot be fair and impartial. And so then the judge will either agree, the other attorney will have an opportunity to challenge that and say, oh, well, I don't necessarily think that what they said means that they can't be fair and impartial. It just means, X, Y, Z. And typically that will require a sidebar where the judge will weigh in. The judge may ask the person for, a series of follow-up questions in order to make a determination as to how serious or deeply entrenched their bias may be, if there is any. And, ultimately they're going to ask the number one question again: as a juror, are you able to be fair and impartial in this case, regardless of what other experiences you may have had? Can you do it in this case? And I think, in a case like this one, what is going to likely happen is that they're going to get down to the wire. They're going to start running out of jurors, I think. And I think that, some of the hesitant, I don't know, maybe I can, that may have been cause for you to release a juror early on, might actually still land a juror on the panel ultimately as you get down, further in terms of your selection becoming slimmer and slimmer.
That was going to be my question. So at the end of the day, they're going to ultimately have to seat a jury. Historically, is there a usage of that preemptive strike that, because I'm thinking of prior cases, and it comes to mind that this has been used almost to address the racial makeup of juries, not particularly in this Derek Chauvin case, but in general. Could you speak to that?
Sure. No. So there absolutely has historically been abuse of preemptive strikes and preemptive challenges. And because of that, there is a Supreme Court case that from that we have what's called a Batson charge, and the Batson challenge rather. And a Batson challenge is when you can basically say that the racial or ethnic makeup of this jury is so slanted and so skewed that these things will prevent the defendant from being able to get a fair trial, or a fair trial from taking place. And at that point, what happens is the preemptive strikes are reviewed, and they're reviewed for, is there a pattern here, a pattern of discrimination, a pattern of somehow misuse or abuse in terms of how the preemptive strikes were used to either single out or exclude jurors of a certain race, jurors of a certain sex, or any particular demographic that is ascertainable by a quick scan of what the jury looks like, versus being an actual jury that's representative of the community and someone's peers.
And have you seen, or has there been any conversations or articles about this particular case being subject to that same kind of influence using the preemptive strike?
I haven't seen that yet. I don't think that we'll necessarily see a Batson charge. We don't know the full makeup of the jury at this point. And, slowly we're getting information about, who the jurors are, what their profiles are. And we don't even know all of the jurors' racial or ethnic profiles at this point. And so I don't think that we'll see that as of yet. I do sort of imagine that this is a process that we may see some sort of concessions being made as we go further into the case, because like I said, they've had to reject a slew of jurors, and this is taking place in a venue where the crime actually happened.
Right.
And so, it's even more likely that these people will be charged and influenced by the news. And so at some point, the hesitancy that might have gotten someone kicked at first may not be enough to exclude them from a jury. So it's going to be an interesting process to watch going forward.
Absolutely. This case is really an important case, and we appreciate you coming and speaking with us. Charles Coleman Jr., thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
You too.
We are onto something that is going to be amazing, but what we need is your help.
The number one problem is there's too much power in too few hands.
Every single problem that we have can be traced back to dark money.
They take large donors, they serve large donors.
So these handful of gatekeepers try to dictate everything.
Like all of you already know, they don't work for you, they work for their donors. So fire them and hire people who will only work for you, that say no corporate backed money.
We are going to change the way we elect candidates in this country.
Uncorrupted Democrats who are going to fight for the issues and win on policy.
This is incredibly personal. We need free health care for everyone.
We're fighting for $15 minimum wage, single payer health care, debt-free college, and we are going to get money out of politics once and for all.
I've taken a public pledge not to accept any corporate money.
Because the last thing we're going to do is go into another presidential election and run a corporatist against a populist candidate.
At some point, the buck needs to stop, and it's gonna stop with us. It's gonna stop with Justice Democrats.
So who are we?
People who do not take corporate PAC money.
We're relying on small donors.
99.9% of our contributions came from people.
You're a Just Democrat, so you don't take any corporate PAC money.
I'm not influenced by money.
As a Justice Democrat, I made that pledge.
Not a betting.
Absolutely no.
I will go to Congress unbossed and unbought.
We try to create a government which works for all of us.
That is what America's about, and that's what a representative democracy should be about.
We are just getting warmed up here.
Vote for uncorrupted Democrats. The fight starts now, it starts today, and it starts with you.
I've been honest with him. Like, yeah, I was upset with you and I shouldn't have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
Did you know that more than 20% of the world's oxygen comes from the Amazon? Why? Because of trees. I know what you're thinking. Of course! So what do we want to do? We want to plant more trees so we can save the climate. It's quite literal. So that's what leads to our new partner, Plant Your Change. Love it. It's so easy. What they do is you take the credit or debit cards you already have and you plug it into the system. And if you so choose, you get to round up every purchase to the nearest dollar and they plant a tree for you. Okay. Now you could also choose if you want to do it on only certain kinds of purchases or only so often, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But literally every cent makes a difference here. It's Plant Your Change. And if you want to know more information, just go to tyt.com/trees. Let's go save the planet together.
Now, top. No. No. No.
Today, a terrible day for the internet, a terrible day for America. The internet as we know it is not going to exist anymore.
A real dark day for information and yet another way that they're bleeding out the democracy.
We're now going to have these gatekeepers of information deciding what we can and can't see, and that's what scares me the most.
Whether you're conservative or progressive or anywhere in the middle, this is the one thing we should all agree to. Protect the internet, because the establishment is coming for it. Don't let them destroy the internet.
All right. Welcome to the conversation. We got a great guest for you guys. He's running for Senate in Missouri as a Democrat, but he's going to be a populist. Fascinating. This is different. Already we like it a little bit. So let's meet Lucas Kunce and see if we like it more. So Lucas, welcome to the program. How you doing?
Thanks, Cenk. Great. It's really exciting to be here. We've had a real fun time.
All right, excellent. Look, I want to get into why you're running and who you are, and what brought you to this moment, because it's always informative to know that. But I want to start with what happened when you came back from the Marines. So you did 13 years in the Marines?
Yeah, 13 years in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, and so Semper Fi. I'm not Marines. I don't really do that, but I just know that Semper Fi is super cool, so I wanted to say it to you. Okay, so
it is super cool. I'm glad you know that.
Oh yeah. Oh, nobody. Look, whatever you think of the Marines, nobody thinks Semper Fi isn't cool. So you were poor. You go to the Marines. We'll get back to the poverty and all. Okay, we're in a fun way of doing this interview. But you come back from the Marines. You come back to your hometown. What's your hometown, and what did you find?
So I grew up in Jeff City, Missouri, and yeah, it wasn't, we were kind of in a poor neighborhood, but one of the things that I found when I came back each time, I deployed to Iraq, and then I come home in 2009, and the first house I ever lived in is bulldozed down. It fell apart. It's now an empty lot. I come back later from Afghanistan, and the house I grew up in, joined the Marine Corps out of, which was actually only four doors down from the other house, is vacant and abandoned. The corner store's all boarded up, and it's really hard to see what's happened to my old neighborhood.
So what do you think went wrong? As you look around, what didn't we do right?
Yeah, I don't just think what went wrong. I know what went wrong. And what went wrong was we had massive corporations buying off the politicians in Missouri for several decades. And these guys managed our decline. They essentially stripped Missouri for parts. So they partnered with these companies to let them move overseas, ship jobs overseas, or ship the headquarters out of state. Really just globalization and corporate consolidation, all driven by corporate power, just pushed Missouri to the brink. And if you see like a chart of the economic recovery from the Great Recession, Missouri is just completely flat, and a bunch of the other states in the area go up. It's really sad, and it was fueled by massive corporate power because stockholders wanted to make a buck.
Okay, now we like what we're hearing. Okay, so that is.
I don't like what I'm hearing. I wish it never happened.
Yeah, no, but Lucas, that's a disaster. That's a disaster for the country. And the reason, of course, we like to hear it is because you're at least acknowledging it, which almost no other politician does. And they just keep telling us the stock market's doing well, as if that's somehow related to Jeff City, Missouri. And it ain't. And so it's heartening to hear it. And you were super proactive. You already got tytlucas.com. So if folks want to help, you're going to go to tytlucas.com so we can get real people into the Senate too. And that would be amazing. Lucas, you've already been endorsed by PCCC, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so you coming out of the gate really strong with a progressive group backing you. So that's gives you some bona fides. So, but let's go back to what's happening in the middle of the country. Lucas, I get, my sense is this, that the coast, especially the media centers like New York and Washington and the power centers, have no earthly idea how devastated the middle of the country is. And the middle of the country, because they're sitting fat on the coast, they do have their money in the stock market. The stock market is doing well. I think that they genuinely look around going, everyone I know is doing great. I don't know what people are complaining about. Meanwhile, in the middle of the country, I feel that there's a rage growing because of how it's being hollowed out. Do I get the right sense on that? Am I missing anything about that?
You're absolutely right, Cenk. And I can give you actually a concrete personal example. And so that's that, in 2014, my dad spent 2 years trying to sell the house that I grew up in our old neighborhood. It's a nice house. It's one of these old Sears kit homes. And these things, you can find them all over the country because they came out of a catalog, the Sears catalog. And, everyone on the coast was talking about how great the economy is, how we'd recovered from the Great Recession, and stuff, everything was booming. My dad tried to sell that house for 2 years. He got $40,000 on it, and he owed $80,000 on it. So when they say, all you got to do to get wealthy in this country or to build wealth is to buy a house and work hard and keep your head down. That's exactly what he did. And when he retired, he was left with a pile of debt. And the real thing that upset me about this house was at the same time, I was stationed at the Pentagon at the time, and I would walk by the exact same house that I grew up in, the exact same Sears kit home, and that house is right now worth about $900,000. So the exact same house in Washington, D.C., where all our money is getting stuck to, is $900,000, and back home here in Jeff City, it's $40,000. That's the difference.
Yeah. So, Lucas, there's so many things that come out of that. By the way, if you want to get his whole backstory, they did a great little ad on it. And so we'll put that link in the description box below. If you're watching later on YouTube or Facebook, we'll also put the link to tytlucas.com if you want to help donate to get a Populist campaign. You're not taking any corporate PAC money, right, Lucas?
No. One of the things I want to do is abolish corporate PACs completely.
Okay. We're having a further conversation now. Okay, now we're rolling.
We need to take it next level, man.
So I there's so many questions I want to ask you, but one of them is, how do you move the Democratic Party? Because right now you'll be on the outer edge of the Democratic Party. They hate populist talk. The leadership does, and you're never going to win in Missouri if you go there and be a corporate stooge. Like, honestly, in my opinion, you don't have to back it up, that every single person Chuck Schumer picks, right? They've got corporate Democrat written all over them. Maybe Claire McCaskill, again, don't say anything. I know you'll get yourself in trouble, okay? But like, so how do you move the Democratic Party in the direction of that you're going, populism, where you go to, hey, look, man, this isn't working for us. We're getting killed out here in Missouri. How do you move them in that direction?
I got 2 points on this. And the first one is that I am very, very concerned that the Josh Hawleys of the world, Joshua Hawley is from Missouri, and this guy comes out here with this fake populist agenda, and we're not providing them a good alternative for that. That's one of my big motivations for running, is that, we need to show that we can have an inclusive, progressive populism that actually takes care of people. And if we don't do that, we're going to keep losing people in the Midwest who feel like they've been left behind and are being convinced of who the villain is, being somebody who it's not. Like, the villain here is corporate monopolies. It's nothing else. It's massive corporations buying our politicians. But they get tricked on all these other issues, and people like Josh Hawley, who wants to do absolutely nothing about the system that keeps us one disaster away from being on our knees begging him for money. He's been able to take advantage of this, and we're going to convince the Democratic Party by having a strong message and winning. The people in this state have been demanding a change in who fundamentally has power in our country. I see that. I feel it every single day. We've passed progressive ballot measure after progressive ballot measure here. Most people around the country wouldn't know that, but we fought back right to work. We passed Medicaid expansion. We increased the minimum wage way above what the federal limit is. And we passed medical marijuana. That's what we want. We want power out of corporate hands and in our own hands. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're running on, and I'm really excited about it.
So you grew up poor. Tell us about your upbringing a little bit and how that affected you and who you are today.
I grew up in a magical neighborhood. Like, there were kids running all over the place. We were in and out of each other's houses all the time. Everyone parented us, took care of us. Didn't matter if you were black and white. Like, we were all together. That's the beauty of this country, man. And yes, we had hard times, and none of us had very much money. We lived paycheck to paycheck. My parents, I remember them writing checks at the grocery store and asking the cashier not to cash it, and the manager, because it was a local store, not some big monopoly, actually knowing us and knowing that we were good for it and taking care of us. And I remember, when I was a kid, my little sister was born with a heart condition, and we went bankrupt, right? And the reason we made it through that, though, was that the people around us took care of us. They didn't have any more money than we did, but down at my mom's prayer group, they'd raised money for us. I remember sitting in our living room and just like more lasagna and casserole rolling through that front door than we could ever eat. And in my mind, what we need to do is we need to make sure that that's who has power in this country. That's who makes decisions. At that level, we know how to take care of each other. It's what we believe in. And I'm tired of these massive corporations coming in and stripping our communities for parts. That's exactly what they've done. They stripped us for parts. They don't treat us like human beings. And, they deny the right to vote to many people. They don't care about us. And I want to change that.
That's powerful, Lucas. And so one more question. So you worked at an organization that fights against corporate power. So first, real quick, tell us what that is. And then most importantly, yes, but how does that affect the actual people of Missouri? That because sometimes that work could feel esoteric or like that's an interesting intellectual exercise, but how does it affect my life in Missouri?
Yeah, so when I ended my time in the Marine Corps, I joined a nonprofit called the American Economic Liberties Project. And what we do is we fight big agriculture companies, pharmaceutical cartels, big tech companies, and the people that really just control our economy and our way of life. And these massive corporations, especially monopolies, they impact us every single second of every single day. It's very difficult to start a small business now because the marketplace is so oppressive. You know, we have fewer smaller businesses than we've ever had before. Entrepreneurship is down. If you're a small farmer or any sort of farmer who's not a massive corporate farm, you're getting pushed on every single end on the agricultural side. You know, you pay more for the inputs and you get less money when you sell, and you have to try to compete with people who can sell for cheaper.
Thank you for joining us, Lucas. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Cenk. I'm really happy to come back.
Turks, Jake Huger, Benjamin Dixon with you guys. I need you guys to understand that we're likely headed towards a preposterously good show. That's our trajectory. We'll see if we arrive, okay? Will we be coming on a train? I don't know. Will it be filled with hype? No one knows yet. That's the great thing about this. We don't know how it's gonna end. We have a certain sense of it. Are you going to be watching this show on a boat? You could be. Are you gonna be watching it with a goat? You might be, I guess. Okay, Ben, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, Jake. You know, I feel like I'm in good company with you whenever you do some of your dad jokes, because like that's where I am in life right now. So everything that you've said so far, I'm laughing, even though I know they're high quality dad jokes.
Well, look, I'll take it. I mean, as long as they're at least high quality in any category.
High quality H2O.
Yeah, and then that state that you described is a perpetual state for me. It's not just a perpetual state of being a dad. I'm in a perpetual state of dad jokedom. That's where I live. That's where I live. Okay, that's my truth. All right.
Mine too. Clearly, it's mine too.
You know, as Anna says, you do you, boo. But in my case, I've already done me, boo. Okay, this is who I am. Okay, all right, before I go even crazier, let's actually do the news. That's what we do on this show. So Ben's gonna give us the news, and oh boy, yeah. This can usually be categorized as oh boy. So Ben, take it away.
So yesterday, in the wake of the tragic murders that happened at the Atlanta spas, there's been quite the controversy that has broken out around one particular comment from one of the sheriffs that were involved in the press conference yesterday. I want to give you the context by playing the video where he said that, well, the murderer had a bad day. Let's start there.
The suspect did take responsibility for the shootings. He said that early on once we began the interviews with him. He claims that these, and as the chief said, this is still early, but he does claim that it was not racially motivated. He apparently has an issue, what he considers a sex addiction, and sees these locations as something that allows him to go to these places, and it's a temptation for him that he wanted to eliminate. Like I said, it's still early on, but those were comments that he made.
Did he discuss any kind of religious motivation for this, or was he responsible?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of.
Or political?
Non-political. I've heard nothing about politics. They got that impression that yes, he understood the gravity of it, and he was pretty much fed up and kind of at the end of his rope, and yesterday was a really bad day for him, and this is what he did.
Remorseful?
I'm not going to go to. I don't know if he was remorseful or not.
So yesterday was a really bad day for him. Obviously, that was a repulsive comment that most people quickly identified as sympathizing with a mass murderer. The New York Times picked it up and said the following, quote, "The comments were widely panned on social media, with critics characterizing them as callous and pointing to Facebook posts from March 30th and April 2nd of last year by Captain Baker, in which he promoted sales of an anti-Asian t-shirt. The t-shirts, echoing the rhetoric of President Donald J. Trump, referred to the coronavirus as an, quote, important virus from China." And the article went on to say, "Place your order." This is a quote from his actual social media post. "Place your order while they last," Captain Baker wrote at the time of one of the posts. He did not immediately respond to requests for comment on Wednesday. So obviously, when he said this, when he said that he had a bad day, everyone rightly got the sensation that there's something wrong with this Captain Baker, and social media quickly discovered that, well, one of the reasons he may have sympathized with the mass murderer who targeted Asians, Asian Americans, is because he himself is a racist and has racism towards particularly that group. You could bring the image on the screen. You can see right now, you can see the images of the COVID-19 t-shirts in the form of a Corona, the alcoholic beverage Corona, and then underneath it, imported virus from China, with the enunciation attributing to Donald Trump. So Jake, this is a really terrible addition to a story that's already tragic, but it is really consistent in terms of what Baker said yesterday at that press conference, and the fact that it was quite easy for social media to dig up the fact that he himself is a racist.
Yeah, so Ben had to explain to me before the show started why spell China CHY-NA, and that's apparently in reference to Trump saying China. Okay, if you act now, this extra bit of racism thrown in for free in this T-shirt, right? And so, and by the way, his message almost read exactly like that. So, look, guys, the thing about folks who have discriminatory points of view, you go racist, bigot, you name it. Sometimes I try to hold off on saying that because I know that it's such a trigger for right wingers that they immediately shut off their minds. Racism can't exist. I can't possibly have it. So the minute you use that word, I will go to a corner and cry until you're done. But I will not open my ears or my mind, right? But why would you wear a shirt like that? What are you trying to? What is the message you're trying to deliver with that shirt, right? So, like on TYT, we have a shirt that says "Mount Squad More." The message being delivered is obvious. We like the squad, right? And that's in Congress. This shirt is, COVID-19 is bad, but we all know COVID-19 is bad. Like you're gonna wear a shirt that says, "I don't like AIDS." Okay, but what's your point? Why? What are you saying? And of course, especially with the way that China is spelled there, right? To evoke Trump's racist way of referring to China. And the whole point of the shirt is, this isn't about COVID, this is about me hating that this came from China. Look, you could turn that around and say the people that are most responsible for coronavirus is us here in America. And we had the most cases, we had the most deaths, we also spread it to the most places. So in China, it appears to have started in Wuhan, right? And so that's bad. I don't know what. Well, first of all, we don't know why it started. The most likely reason is for a transmission from animals to humans, and it might have been in a roundabout way. So that's kind of random. That's not anybody's fault, right? And then the question is, how do you deal with it? The Chinese government is at fault for not immediately being honest and transparent about it. But again, we don't have a great leg to stand on here. Our government was not very honest or transparent about it, let alone knowledgeable, hydroxy and inject the bleach and all that stuff, right? So no, you're trying to make a political point about Asians, right? If you put on a T-shirt about the Spanish flu and you're like, the goddamn Spanish did it to us. The point is the Spanish part, not the Spanish flu part, right? So, and by the way, that also did not start in Spain. Okay, that also started in America. Not also, but that one started in America. So, but now back to the really important part here of, okay, what are we concerned about? We're concerned about whether the sheriff can deliver equal justice. So when he has a shirt like that and proudly puts that out into the world, you get a sense of his mindset. But Ben is right, you get more of a sense of his mindset from the press conference. Now everybody's focusing on he had a bad day. It makes it seem like sympathetic to him, like the people who died had a much worse day. That's not how he framed it. He thought about it from the perspective of the shooter. Now that's not something that cops do often. Now I've never heard a police officer of any kind saying about a Muslim terrorist attack, well, to be fair, Ahmed had a bad day. Never. Not once, nor will you ever see that. And you know that, everybody knows that, even if you're a right winger, you know that, right? It's about perspective, right? So then I want to talk about the things that have not been talked about in the press as much. He also said, and this is people have talked about this to some degree. What he says is that it was not racist. Well, look, I get some of the logic. If he said it was about race, then it makes it easy and apparent, right? And he's relaying information to you. It's not all bad, but I'm also not overly concerned about what the homicidal lunatic said, right? It's fine. And a lot of people have made these comments online. Serial rapists don't go around saying, no, it's because I hated women. But their actions are fairly clear, right? So, but finally, the part I don't think a lot of people have talked about. He said he takes responsibility for it. Now, again, I've never heard that framing from a police officer. When a black person takes responsibility, it's called a confession. Now, when a white guy who hates Asians, kind of like you, does a confession, it's not a confession. He's taking responsibility, like he's a stand-up guy. That goes to frame of mind. And that's what we're concerned about in equal application of justice by police officers.
Wow, Jake, that's such an important point. How just the turn of phrase, right, and the fact that he had the frame of mind, this sheriff's officer, whoever, he had the frame of mind, presence of mind to turn that phrase, really points to the fact that this is a comrade of his. This is somebody who he has more identification with than the victims. And as it pertains to those T-shirts, one of the things that jumps out the most to me in this country is the need and how effective, quite honestly, Donald Trump and conservatives were with deflecting from our culpability, our responsibility, their responsibility for this virus spreading as fast and as viciously as it did. And they know clearly the technique to get away with that is to other somebody, like to vilify someone. Someone had to be the villain in order for them to get away with, quite frankly, the stupidity that we've seen not only since last year, but all the way to today with Rand Paul still suggesting that we shouldn't wear a mask anymore. So this China T-shirt is part and parcel of the strategy of conservatives to make sure that the Republican Party, Donald Trump specifically, Fox News, and everyone else who played this pandemic down bore no responsibility. And how do you get away with that? You make another villain, and that's what they did here.
That's 100% right. And look, by the way, there could be a range of options as to why he did what he did. And it's not binary. People are now trying to say, well, is it random? Usually when it's white folks, people say random, lone wolf, nothing we could do. No political angle, no religious angle, no nothing, right? And then is it religious or is it racial? The answer could be some combination thereof, right? So is he mentally unbalanced? Well, obviously he killed 8 people, right? Is a Muslim terrorist unbalanced? Yeah, obviously they killed 8 people, right? Even angry people of a certain ideology don't kill 8 people. They do when they're mentally unbalanced, right? And so then secondarily, are racial and religious components present here? They certainly appear to be. I'm not foreclosing any options, but I'm saying you don't have to put it in just one bucket. But one thing is, to me, is absolutely clear. The guy says over and over again, he thought he had a sexual addiction. His particular church, and that doesn't mean that it applies to everyone at that church. It's just that interpretation taught him that having sex was terrible, and you should hate yourself for it. But they, on top of that, layered in, women have tempted you, and hence the implication is you should hate them as well. So if you want to protect that interpretation of religion, you are wrong. It does lead to misogyny, and oftentimes it does lead to crimes like this. It doesn't matter what religion it comes from. If you're teaching people, men, that it is women's fault for X, Y, or Z, not based on any fact, but based on old, misogyny and sexism, etc. Yeah, you're culpable. You put that poison in his head. So let's be real about that.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we've got a poll here. Let's go to tyt.com/polls. You're gonna have to remind me what the poll is. Okay. Will the Georgia sheriff's spokesperson lose his job over racist social media posts? Yes or no? Okay. It's a good question. Another good question for another day is, should he? And so, look, Ben, on that front, one more thing. Sometimes I even catch myself feeling guilty about pointing out other people's racism. Like I want to cushion the blow for white folks in the audience, because they really, really do get very sensitive about that. And sometimes rightfully so, not often, right? But sometimes, and sometimes wrongfully so. And I catch myself being like, look, guys, can you see why this is? Partly as a way of better communicating with folks and reaching out to them and trying to evoke empathy to have a human conversation, but partly because if you're gonna say, hey, maybe that guy might be discriminatory towards Asians and he has a gun and a badge, etc., maybe we shouldn't do that. I know that a lot of white folks are gonna react with, oh, now you're being totally unfair to him just for being racist.
I mean, yeah, I can see what you're saying, Jake, but I've got so many gray hairs from trying to deal in good faith with people who intentionally have no intention of dealing in good faith in these conversations. And I'm kind of at the point now where it's like, I'll use myself as an example. I used to get really sensitive when I would see posts about misogyny or all men do this and all men do that. And eventually I just had to come to terms with the fact that, you know what, even if it's not me, it exists. And if I'm so sensitive about them saying something that hurts me and my feelings just because I'm a man, then I'm probably complicit with this entire problem in the first place. And it wasn't until I was getting off a train in Boston one year, and this guy just acting normal asked me for a pen, pre-pandemic, obviously. I gave him a pen. And this young woman got off the train and he went from professional to complete barbarian in 0.001 seconds. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna shut my mouth anytime someone says something about men, because it may not be all men, but having just one who can act on that level of vitriol towards women is extremely dangerous. So that's my world.
Yeah, well, last piece of irony here. Ben Shapiro has that line about facts don't care about your feelings. But man, the right wing's got a lot of feelings, and we all have to be so sensitive, like couch our critique and like, are you guys okay? Like, that's a cop that might, not care about Asians that are suffering crime, and he's a cop, or he might even do things against Asians with his badge and his gun. Are you guys okay? Are you guys okay? Are your feelings okay? Oh, go. Your feelings are okay. All right. Now, can we get to the facts about anti-Asian crime, et cetera? We spend so much of our collective energy worrying about the feelings of right wingers.
Yeah. Speaking of the feelings of right wingers, I want to shift gears to Charles Eugene Roy, better known as Chip Roy. He is the US representative for Texas 21st Congressional District. And today in testimony, he said something that is extremely problematic. He said, there's an old saying in Texas about find all the rope in Texas and get a tall oak tree. We take justice very seriously. I want us to take a listen to that clip.
The victims of race-based violence and their families deserve justice. And that's the case what we're talking about here with the tragedy, what we just saw occur in Atlanta, Georgia. I would also suggest that the victims of cartels moving illegal aliens deserve justice. The American citizens in South Texas that are getting absolutely decimated by what's happening at our southern border deserve justice. The victims of rioting and looting in the streets last week, businesses closed, burned last summer, deserve justice. We believe in justice, right? There's old sayings in Texas about, find all the rope in Texas and get a tall oak tree. We take justice very seriously, and we ought to do that. Round up the bad guys. That's what we believe. My concern about this hearing is that it seems to want to venture into the policing of rhetoric in a free society, free speech, and away from the rule of law and taking out bad guys.
So clearly the problem here is the allusion to lynching, which goes without saying is a blight on American history that in some form still occurs to this day. And it troubled a lot of people. And before I get too tied up into what this man said, I want to share a tweet from Catherine Lee, Dr. Catherine Lee, because she called, once she heard it, she immediately called the congressman's office to find out why he would say such a thing. And his staffers made an excuse, and this is the excuse that they made. And this is what she said on Twitter. She said, quote, did Rep. Chip Roy begin his remarks at the House Judiciary Committee hearing on violence against Asian Americans by joking about Texas's justice tradition of trees and ropes? Surely I misheard. And the justification that they gave for that was the fact that he was quoting a song by Toby Keith. The song is Beer for My Horses. And this is the excuse that a sitting congressman's staffers gave for him making an allusion to lynching when this country has such a history filled with lynching. And just for good measure, I want to read the quote from the song, because the quote from the song isn't even better. The lyrics from the song isn't even better. And this is what the song says. Grandpappy told my pappy back in my day, son, a man had to answer for the wicked that he's done. Take all the rope in Texas, find a tall oak tree, round up all them bad boys, hang them high in the street for all the people to see. And my only question before we go any further is, who do you think his grandpappy actually identified as the bad guy? Jake.
Yeah. So there's obviously a history of lynchings in this country and in Texas, and that's what he's referring to. Now, not all lynchings were done against African Americans. There were times that they would grab folks and hang them that were white. Okay, but were the majority of the lynchings, the overwhelming majority of lynchings, done to black folks in this country? Yes. Was the point of the lynching justice? No, almost never. And the point was to terrorize black people in this country. You better not stand up to us. If you do, we'll hang you from the tallest oak tree. And like I've told you in the past, it's disturbing, but you should know it. They oftentimes would do a picnic around the body. And that was a message. It wasn't a message to the bad guys. That what bad thing they did, like Emmett Till and the others, was not a crime. It was the audacity to think that they might be anywhere near as equal to white people. Okay, so that's the history of lynching. By the way, they would burn the body afterwards. They would cut off the genitals. So understand the reference he's making, because he's making a reference, it's a very clear reference. So I want you to understand the power of that reference. I don't want him to pretend that the history of lynchings in this country is different than what it is. Oh, we did, could have happened to anybody. It happened randomly. No. The overwhelming majority of lynchings in this country had a very political purpose. If you stand up to us, we murder you in the most grotesque ways, and we do it as a political statement, which is, by the way, the definition of terrorism, to kill for a political message. So that is Chip Roy, sitting Republican congressman of Texas, glorifying terrorism. Maybe the worst terrorism we have ever had in America. You say, oh my God, 9/11. Okay, 9/11 is awful, absolutely awful. Now, that was one day. Take hundreds of years of, if you dare raise your head, we will murder you in the streets from the tallest oak tree. You want to talk about terrorism? Why do you think they burned crosses on people's yards? That was to terrorize them. If you ever rise up and demand equality or anything coming to equality, we will lynch you from the tallest oak tree in Texas. So now Chip Roy, in the middle of a hearing about discrimination, says, oh yeah, these days the Republican Party rewards monsters. So they're in a competition for who could be most monstrous. So now Ron Johnson went out there the other day and said, oh, the people who were rioting, they were white, so I didn't have any problem with them. But if it was Black Lives Matter, I would have hated them. I would have been really scared. And now Chip Roy says, hold my beer. Okay, I'm going to go pro-lynching. I'm going to go pro-lynching because the Republican voters are here for it. Yeah. I will not be punished. I will be rewarded. That's why today he doubled down when challenged. He said, yeah, I meant it. And that's who the Republican Party is today.
That's who they are. That's who they've been. That's who they desire to continue to be. And they try to get away with it under the guise of free speech. But when your speech becomes a threat to my life, right? That's the intersection that we're playing with right here. It's because like he's doing this in context in the backdrop of 8 people being murdered, 6 of them being targeted because they were Asian. And he's using just this off the cuff allusion, and what he gets to is lynching. That shows the depth of the political derangement that rests in the hearts of conservatism. This is how they think. From the depths of his heart, he really thought that that was making a salient point. And the thing that gets me the most about this, Cenk, is that there's one other clip, and it's from 2019. And I want to show where in this instance, he's telling people to hold the line, don't be so angry. We really care about Texas and justice in Texas, but don't get so furious. I want you to see how angry he got over the oversight committee, the House Oversight Committee requesting emails from Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner. Like he got 38 hot over this. Take a look in.
This is the face of the Democratic Party. This is the face of your Congress today, America.
Good job, Chip. Good job. Mr. Connolly.
I thank the chair.
Mr. Connolly.
I thank the chair. I have a motion. I do want to just say, shame on my colleague from Texas.
No.
To question the motivation of Democrats.
Shame on this body.
Yeah, I know. We've heard from you. It's my time.
And you'll continue to hear from me.
Wait
in defense of this country.
Mr. Chairman.
Hold up. He has the time.
I have the time.
America deserves the time.
Yeah. America deserves better than what it just heard from, Mr.
We can't take
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion.
taking his ball and going home. Bye.
So he gets so enraged over trying to have accountability for Republicans that he gets up and storms out. Rest in power to the chairman at the time, Elijah Cummings. But he wants us to not get so hasty with our anger over a white supremacist killing Asian Americans. That to me is the epitome of what Republicans and conservatives are in this country right now.
Ben, I love that you showed that clip because it's really important context. So context matters. So when it's 8 people murdered and we're having a hearing about anti-Asian crime, which is up 150% in the last year, he's not bothered by it. He's bothered by, wait, are you gonna stop me from saying racist things? I'm really, that vexes me, right? But when it's his privileges and the privileges of his Republican colleagues that are in question, I'm so mad, right? Oh, a bunch of people were slaughtered. That's okay. I'm gonna nitpick here, right? Ivanka, we're talking about Ivanka now. But the other part of the context that matters is later in that speech from today, Chip Roy started talking about the Chinese Communist government and started blaming them for the virus. But wait a minute, that's the kind of talk that started this in the first place. So now, why are you making those comments in the context of this hearing? If we're having a hearing about Chinese trade relations with China or something along those lines, and you want to use your demagoguery there in that context, okay, I still don't like it, but at least there's a logical connection. The only reason to bring up the demagoguery around the Chinese Communist Party at a hearing about anti-Asian hatred is to say, I kind of like the anti-Asian hatred. This is what sparked it in the first place. That's why I'm gratuitously bringing it in here to tell you I'm gonna rub your face in it. The reason is my voters love it. They love it when I'm racist. So I'll throw an anti-Asian rhetoric in a committee hearing about anti-Asian rhetoric, and I'll throw in a gratuitous lynching reference for you to really just wave that white hood all over the Congress. I want you guys to be clear. If there was a Klan, I'd be the leader of that Klan, is what Chip Roy is saying. I got it, okay? Now, that message is super clear. But one more thing, Ben. He said in Texas, we take justice very seriously. Do you? Because the lynchings, by definition, and I'm not just talking about the black lynchings, every lynching, by definition, was an affront to justice. We do not want to go through the justice system. We want to hang that guy, right or wrong. We don't want to take it through the courts. We don't want to go to law enforcement. What we want to do is take it into our own hands because we're not interested in justice. We're interested in vengeance, right or wrong. That was literally the point of the lynchings. Otherwise, they would have gone through the justice system. So he is making a passionate defense of injustice as he spews his racist rhetoric for the Republican crowds to consume.
Yeah.
All right, we have to take a break here. But when we come back, we're not done with this because some that at some point, I guess, claim to be on the left, like Glenn Greenwald, has decided that they're gonna fly their flag too. And white people must be defended. So Glenn is here to help. We will talk about that when we come back. All right, back during the break, let me read some of your comments. I'm going to go to YouTube Super Chat first. Peter Hamby writes in, kicking the victims while they're down, rubbing salt in the wounds. It makes me wonder which virus is worse, the virus Trump ignored or the virus that's been around for over 200 years, being racism. So Peter, by the way, I noticed that you became a Young Turks member the other day. Appreciate it, brother. Thank you for doing that. The join button's right below for anybody interested in doing that. It helps get out our strong progressive message and it allows us to fight for change together. So it makes a big difference. In fact, the folks who just did that are Zay Ivory 7, News Palal 1, and Kylie Walker. So thank you. We really appreciate it. And it makes a giant difference. Republicans Eat in YouTube Super Chat says about the sheriff, explains why he talked like his defense lawyer, the defense lawyer for the shooter. It really did seem that way. Now, by the way, that has happened on many occasions that we've shown you here documented. When it's white right wingers, all of a sudden the cops are the most sympathetic people you've ever seen in your life. And here I'm going to do this comment, but and then I'm going to explain something. So Tony Montana wrote in our member section, tyt.com/join to become a member there. Mr. Cenk, I do not mind you ragging on white people. I'm a white person who's a descendant of Andrew Jackson via my maternal grandmother's part of my family. But Tony, I want you to understand something. We're not ragging on white people. That would be equally insane. Okay, no, we're talking about white right wingers with a certain ideology. And the fact that they are white is only relevant because of the power dynamics in this particular country. There are countries where white folks are minorities, etc. Now, overall in the globe, whites have had more power, certainly in the last couple of hundred years, right? That's not always been the case. So it is situational, context does matter, but it's never against white people because that would be irrational. Puff the Magic Dragon says, notice old Chip doesn't dare mention the insurrectionists. I think the American people deserve justice. Or how about all the people of color gunned down by authorities? Their families deserve justice. Could you imagine? That's such a great point, because imagine if a Democratic congressman gave a speech about, there's an old saying in Texas about roping people, and that's why that cop who murdered the unarmed black man, we'll find a rope in a tree for him. Imagine. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Ben with you guys. I'm gonna read one more comment here from our member section before we go on with the news. It's actually related to the story we're gonna cover. Mickey C, the Silver Dragon, wrote in, not racially motivated about the Atlanta shootings. He first shot up an Asian business, then drove 27 miles to find 2 more. Were there no other businesses on the long drive there? So, on the surface, this is not complicated. Okay, now we'll dive into non-surface, so you'll see probably not complicated. Okay, so Ben, take it away.
So Pulitzer Prize winning journalist Glenn Greenwald cannot see the link between the Atlanta spa shootings, where a white man killed 8 Asian women, and white supremacy. I want us to take a look at what he had to say on Twitter before we set the record straight. The first thing he said on Twitter was the following quote: "Has anyone provided an iota of evidence that what is driving this horrific surge of anti-Asian violence is, quote, white supremacist domestic terror? That would require data showing who is primarily perpetrating the violence and with what motive. Where is that?" Now, he went ahead and dunked on liberals for speaking out against his ridiculous tweets. And this is what he shared. He said, quote, "Please look at how stupid and lowly so many liberals are now. If you ask for evidence to support sweeping but dubious claims about the cause of anti-Asian violence, they won't answer. Their brains won't allow that. Instead, they'll call you a racist. It's all they know how to do." So at that point, the journalist Michael Harriot from theroot.com, he jumped in to set the record straight for Glenn Greenwald, and this is what he said on Twitter, quote, "The research revealed nearly 3,800 incidents were reported over the course of roughly a year during the pandemic. It's a significantly higher number than last year's count of about 2,800 hate crimes nationwide over the span of 5 months. He went on to say, also, every journalist will tell you that the reason evidence is so scant is because the pandemic is barely a year old and most law enforcement agencies haven't compiled and released their annual crime statistics yet. This knows that. Now, before we go on any further, Jake, I want to jump in. I want to get you in here on this conversation because this is a market shift. From someone I used to consider friendly as well as a colleague in this space representing the left and progressivism. But it looks as though Glenn is finding colleagues somewhere else these days.
Yeah. So Professor Lessig at Harvard, when talking about corruption in politics, used a great phrase, lean to the green. That's what the politicians do, right? And unfortunately in the new media, some folks are finding it irresistible to lean towards a certain direction. It doesn't mean that in that case it has to be financial. It could be that it's just leaning towards attention. So look, I know how Fox News works, and I've been approached by shows there. And the number one thing they ask you to do is not disagree with the host. So if they bring you on, they only bring you on to agree. Unless it's a structured debate, those are different, okay? But a guy like Tucker Carlson brings you on, and they kind of groom you. And are you okay with only agreeing with them? So that is the implicit deal that Glenn has made. Look, he can say, no, I didn't, I never said that, etc. Really, you're constantly debating Tucker? No, when I see you on Tucker Carlson, you're only agreeing with him. So you're being used for a specific purpose. And yes, you're getting more attention, but it ain't worth it, brother. And so Glenn Greenwald is a guy I deeply respected and has done great work, and that's still the case. And so the fact that he's gone in this direction does not erase that past work. Now, having said that, he is, in my opinion, at this point, partly seeking that attention and partly so obsessed with being contrarian that it is to the detriment of seeking truth. Because if you're constantly trying to be contrarian, well, by definition, your priority is to stand out by being different rather than stand out by serving truth.
Yeah.
And so it will lead you to, if we're being super generous, making mistakes like this. If we're not being generous, it's not a mistake and it's intentional. Now, Michael Harriot has a really compelling point here on whether it's intentional or not. You couldn't do a simple Google search to see that anti-Asian crime has gone up by 150% last year. And as other hate crimes have decreased, that one has gone up. And you think it might have, and you're sure that it has nothing to do with anti-Asian bigotry that is being pushed politically nonstop, including on channels that you're on 24/7. Okay, so. The second layer of that observation by Michael, which is so great, is, wait, why make that assumption? Not only are you not Googling it and you're not looking it up and you're coming in fact-free while accusing others of not having facts, ironic to begin with, but the second part of it is, why assume that the forces of bigotry and racism are innocent if you have no facts, right? And so at a minimum, you can say, look, we don't know, but I can see that the guy drove 27 miles to go attack more Asian places. And I can see why that would be a question that was being asked as to his motive. Maybe I haven't concluded it yet, but that seems like pretty overwhelming evidence. Instead, it appears that you were concluding the opposite. It is a curious place to start a debate we didn't even need to have. But you needed the attention, so you forced a debate by protecting the people that you know are now craving your content.
And the thing that really bothers me about this is the casual disregard for the lives that were taken in exchange for defending people from even the accusation of white supremacy, as if murder is far less egregious than the accusation of white supremacy. And there's one thing that I said on my show this morning, when Glenn wants to see the evidence of racism and white supremacy, the data from this, the data is in the morgue. Like the bodies are there. The bodies of Asian and Asian American women are there. And he expressly targeted them. And for him to come out on this side of the issue, whether it be for attention, whether it be for just the sake of contrarianism, I also think it's because he has slowly but surely made his #1 issue to be against cancel culture. Again, as if cancel culture is far more egregious than murder. But now back to Michael Harriot's point, it's true that law enforcement agencies did not release stats for 2020 yet, but here's some data that we're gonna put on your screen that came from the pre-pandemic era. And it shows that the rate of violence attacked by white people are almost 7 times higher in comparison to the number of violent crimes by other ethnicities. And we've seen, Cenk, we've seen that it has been reported that white supremacist right-wing terrorism is one of the most significant threats to life in this country. I mean, the evidence and the trend is there. And most of all, you said it, Fox News, they are part and parcel of spreading this anti-Asian bigotry that we've seen across this country. And I think perhaps maybe he is doing this on behalf of Tucker Carlson, his friend, whose show he likes to go on as often as he can.
Yeah, and look, at this point, Tucker Carlson are constantly talking about how immigrants are dirty and the country's overcrowded and they bring disease and crime. This is textbook racism, textbook. Glenn, you can't tell that? Look, I had an exchange that I've talked about in the postgame with Tucker Carlson backstage before we debated at Politicon. It was perfectly cordial. Our debate was perfectly cordial. Can you agree with Tucker Carlson that we shouldn't have more wars? Yes, we can agree on that. And so I gave him every benefit of the doubt. But how many times is he gonna go on air and talk about how dirty and unacceptable immigrants are and brown people are before you begin to realize maybe he's a white supremacist and I shouldn't be helping white supremacists? Okay, look, apparently Glenn can't see that, Jimmy can't see that. They're blinded by whatever they're blinded by. Attention, I gotta have it, I gotta be contrarian, I gotta agree with the right wing, they'll put me on air. Okay, they're gonna get super hurt by that. They're gonna have their feelings are gonna rise up and they're gonna say, and congratulations, Glenn, then you'll get to be the victim. And oh my God, just like the right wing, you'll be ecstatic. Ecstatic, can you believe what they said about me? But the good news with me, as everybody knows, is I don't believe in cancel culture. So Glenn can say whatever he wants. Chip Roy can say whatever, Tucker can say whatever they want. I get to say something back, and I'm saying it right now. And if it hurts your feelings, I don't give a damn at all. It's called speech, and I know you're in favor of it. And so don't go on Tucker Carlson and pretend you don't know Tucker Carlson's racist. Please don't do that. Don't write this message when everybody's hurting and saying like, well, I don't know that it's white supremacist domestic terror. That's what Glenn said. Oh, golly gee, I mean, I don't like all of this is sprouting around me and the crime is up and the guy said it's China, China, China. I don't know where it came from. I'm gonna assume it isn't, okay? And so that is a weird assumption to have. And second of all, Glenn, are you so unsophisticated that you think, hey, I see that chart that Ben put up and black people attack Asians too. And I'm gonna point that out. You're unsophisticated enough to not know the context? Okay, number one, you got to layer in socioeconomic conditions. If you say you don't have to, that is a position that is anti-intellectual and buttresses racism for no reason, okay? So, but secondly, you think black people can't hear Trump either? You think you can't hear the constant message of it's the Chinese, it's their fault, it's their fault. And by the way, what do the rich do? In this country, it happens to be rich white right-wingers. They set us against one another. Hey, black folks, be mad at the Jews. The Jews are the ones that have the power. All of a sudden they're mad, right? Hey, you don't have enough white guy in West Virginia or black guy in Oakland. Maybe it's the Chinese's fault. It's the Chinese, it's the Jews. And then next thing you know, there's attacks on synagogues, there's attacks on Chinese. It's called stochastic terrorism. You don't know that concept, Glenn? You know that concept. But hey, congratulations, by saying outrageous things in the middle of people's pain, you got a lot of attention. Mission accomplished.
In the middle of everyone's pain, right? I got to let that one go because that drives a rage and a fury in me because he wants to put the emphasis on protecting white supremacists or people from the accusation of white supremacy before he even gave a moment's consideration for the families who are now trying to figure out how they're going to bury their family members during a pandemic. Good job, Glenn. But as Michael Harriot points out, Greenwald's rhetoric appeases his newfound fans. I want to read this quote, this tweet from Michael Harriot. He said, also notice how Glenn didn't say, I haven't seen any data, therefore I believe all the journalists, cops, and actual Asian Americans say. No, he's like, F all that. I need white people to verify this for me. And I want to bring up the tweet that Michael Harriot is referring to. It's a tweet that was liked by, that was stated by Glenn Greenwald, but it was liked by a very proud white supremacist. He has no shame about his white supremacy, Nicholas J. Fuentes. And the tweet said, has anyone provided an iota evidence? The same one that we read, but is liked by an aspiring and upcoming, rising through the ranks conservative that is a very loud and proud white supremacist. And perhaps that is the audience he's more concerned about appealing to than the humanity of the 8 people who lost their lives this week.
The last thing I'll say is, you know what's part of cancel culture? Murder.
Facts.
And so he canceled the lives of those 8 people, but you couldn't find it in your heart to find sympathy for the people who had been canceled, had their lives canceled. Instead, you found sympathy for the white supremacists as people wondered if they had some culpability in this murder.
Yeah.
Glenn, I'm just asking you to look at your priorities one more time and see if you could find it in your heart in your mind to actually open up to the possibility that maybe not everyone is wrong at all times, and that you are not a champion simply for disagreeing with everyone. That maybe the pursuit of truth is more important than the pursuit of attention through disagreement. Okay, we got to take a break. When we come back, more ass kicking all around. Back on the Young Turks during the break here. I got to read some of your comments. Effectos writes in, people need to remember that Asia is made up of more countries than just China, Japan, and the Koreas. I worry for Thai, Indian, and Filipino Americans who could be targeted. In fact, they have been. And so that's a great point. No More Trigonometry says, Glenn Greenwald has been going in this direction for a while. He's done great work in the past, but he's so bent on hating liberals and mainstream media that he just comes off as a contrarian. By the way, he doesn't just come off that way. He is a contrarian. Same thing with Michael Tracy. They're so obsessed with being contrarian that they've lost sight of reality. So, all right, that's in our member section, tyt.com/join and become a member there. Get your comments read more often. That's one of the privileges. We're gonna do a post game today you're gonna love. New members on YouTube, Chris Ricard, Kobe Green, Sonia Cordray. You guys are amazing. Thank you for hitting that join button. down below. Now, some amazing comments from Super Chat. First, Republicans Eat wrote, the fact of it being targeted to Asians from a white person by definition is a white person trying to be superior to those Asians. It is obvious. So that's one comment. Yessi Garcia says, just as nice. And the last part is great. Yessi says, Cenk, I love your passion and intelligence. Right wingers want proof of racism, but not for voting fraud. Oh, that's such a great point. God, I love our audience. Okay, so the only place you don't need proof is when it comes to voter fraud. That's amazing, amazing. And Republicans with another good point. Why is it not being regularly pointed out the GOP is responsible for the entire outbreak? We saw the result of the outbreaks with CDC in place China, and when they removed it, this was the result. I mean, yeah, if we're gonna get at people for spreading the virus, it should be Republicans. They spread it the most. That's a fact. We can get into it on another show. Trisha Briggs says, Cenk and Ben, as always, thrilled to see you. That being said, I miss Anna. There's references to queens and bosses, etc. Thank you, Trisha. We appreciate it. We'll be right back. Back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Ben with you guys. Ben, take it away.
So, Cenk, despite the mass shooter in Atlanta, in the Atlanta Spa massacre, specifically targeting Asian women, Tucker Carlson did last night what he is paid extremely well to do. He dismissed the possibility that this was a race-based white supremacist attack, and he did so without any remorse whatsoever. And he did so without any consideration for the fact that his own network over the last year has been promoting the bigoted notion of the Chinese China virus.
So the guy's accused of murdering 8 people and all the questions were about race. Okay. But notice, it's the politicians who jump in immediately to divide the country along racial lines.
Now, you have to understand Tucker Carlson does this specifically because his job at Fox News, which he's paid extremely well to do, is to sever and to separate the cause from the effect. The effect is what we saw this week, which is a white Christian man went and targeted Asian spas and killed and massacred 8 people. The cause, at least one of the causes, is Fox News and Tucker Carlson continuously and regularly promoting this xenophobic idea that it came from China and that the reason we're suffering so much in this country, rather, is because of China. And you have to understand, the reason he does these type of things is because he has extremely big shoes, big racist shoes to fill, because he is replacing or has replaced Bill O'Reilly, who made it very clear that this country was built and is supported and sustained on behalf of white Christian men.
Do you understand, and I'm not saying this in a condescending way, you're smarter than I am, but do you understand what the New York Times wants and the far left want? They want to break down the white Christian male power structure of which you're a part, and so am I. And they want to bring in millions of foreign nationals to basically break down the structure that we have.
So that's the hour that Tucker Carlson has replaced. And this is what he does so well. And this is what he makes about $6 to $10 million a year to do. He is there to make sure that he protects that white male Christian power structure. But he gets paid so well because he's able to sow plausible deniability into the minds of all the people who are watching. So despite constantly and consistently forwarding white supremacy on his network, he's always there to make sure that no one ever feels any responsibility for the actions that inevitably come from this white supremacist rhetoric that they push on a regular basis. Now, I want you to watch some of these contradictions. Take a look at this next clip as he uses fear of overpopulation to attack and vilify immigrants.
What's happening on the border tonight will change this country forever. A lot of things won't, this will, and you should know that. Unlike other disasters, mass illegal immigration is permanent. No one ever really gets sent home. Over the past 30 years, the population of the United States has exploded by nearly 100 million people, mostly due to immigration. Were you even aware that that happened? You're not supposed to say a word about it, as every year the United States gets steadily more jammed with people and at the same time more chaotic and less cohesive. As the open spaces shrink, as nature itself recedes in the face of yet another strip mall or apartment complex or fast food outlet to serve the new people. This is becoming a crowded country, and crowded countries are ugly, unhappy countries. Why are we letting that happen?
Now, wait, so just a few days before that, though, Tucker Carlson made it clear that our country isn't particularly overcrowded. Take a listen in.
Well, even with 320 million people living here, this country still is not particularly crowded.
Right, so which is it, Tucker? The fact is the country is not particularly overcrowded. There is a population density map from 2020 that shows that there are entire states that nearly have fewer than 5 people per square mile. That means that there are people who literally have to drive into town over the bridge and through the woods in order to see another human being. But that's besides the point. The point is that he would rather use immigrants and use the fear of overpopulation as a way to attack immigrants than to actually be consistent in his argument. And this is what he does so well. But the question is he worried about overpopulation? Because in this next clip, he seems to be worrying about us not having a big enough population and blaming it on low sperm counts.
So we spent the last year hearing about a health crisis, a pandemic, but there are a lot of health crises. This may be the biggest one. Falling testosterone levels, which have completely reshaped our society, and falling sperm counts, which may make it impossible to continue the human race. Why is this happening? Probably because of chemicals in our environment. According to one scientist, sperm counts in the Western world have dropped 59% between 1973 and 2011. At this pace, sperm counts will reach 0 by 2045. No one talks about this. Everybody should be.
So which is it, Tucker? Is it the fact that you're concerned about overpopulation? Are you concerned about us not populating enough? Or is it rather that you're concerned that we're populating this country with the wrong color of children? And this is why Tucker makes the big bucks. He makes the big bucks because he's simultaneously capable of forwarding white supremacist rhetoric. He's simultaneously capable of sowing the idea of white genocide constantly every night. He packages up in his nice Brooks Brothers suits, or quite frankly, those suits are probably too cheap for him now because of how much money he makes. Because his particular skill set is to constantly sever the effect from the cause. Because if people ever slowed down long enough to realize the type of white supremacy that is being forwarded over Fox News every single day, they would pause and reflect that they may have some culpability in what happened in Atlanta this week, but not to Tucker Carlson. No, his job, his one job is to use thousands of words every single night that his compatriots actually summarize in just 14 words by saying Tucker Carlson really believes that he must secure the existence of his people and a future for white children. And he's paid millions of dollars to do that every single year. And so of course, he cannot see the racism in the attack that happened this week in Atlanta. Because to paraphrase Upton Sinclair, how could Tucker Carlson possibly see the racism when Fox News pays him millions of dollars to ignore it?
Ben, that is 100% right. And let me give even further context to that. So these are not, first of all, Tucker Carlson is not a dumb guy. So does he know history and context? He does, right? So it's not an accident that they're choosing the words that they're choosing, okay? So, and in fact, and the white supremacists have said that he does the most sophisticated job of pushing out their message. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. That's why I'm more concerned about a guy like Tucker Carlson than I am of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a ham-handed fool, and everybody knows that, right? And whereas Tucker Carlson knows how to be clear enough to his white right-wing racist audience that he's on their side and making the same kind of points that they love to hear against black and brown people, while having plausible deniability. But Tucker you can play that game with the mainstream media, and a lot of times they'll fall for it, and they go, well, I mean, context, history, I've never heard of it, but we're not gonna fall for it in our audience, and we're gonna tell everybody, you like speech? We got speech for you, okay? So let's explain. First of all, you have said on occasions, and Laura Ingraham has said the same exact phrase, the immigrants will not replace us. That was written into your script, it was in your prompter, you read it ahead of time, and then you read it on air. You know that the Nazi phrase is the Jews will not replace us. And that's not a phrase that's so common that you say, well, you know, I went to go get a burger. I don't know, I went to go get a pizza. Everybody says I went to go get something, right? No, they will not replace us. It's kind of a weird comment. Why, were Jews trying to replace you? It's distinctive. So when you take that out and you put the immigrants will not replace us, your intent is 1,000% clear. Okay, but if you say it's one comment, okay. Then he goes on and is on multiple occasions talking about how dirty immigrants are. Now that is the most classic trope against the others, the people that you want to isolate and say are a problem and that we should do something drastic about. Was that used in the Holocaust? Definitely. Do you know that? Of course you know that. Are you using it despite that? Well, that would be an interesting decision that you're making, right? Why are you choosing to say, I'm going to ignore a historical context of these words? So if you said, for example, I hate the corporate donors. So I might be tempted to say that some of them are puppeteers. But I would check myself because I know the history. If you say a Jewish person is a puppeteer, well, that's propaganda that the Nazis used. So you shouldn't use that in the context of a Jewish person if you're being thoughtful because of the history of that phrase. But here, instead of being thoughtful, you're purposely driving it home. They're dirty, they will not replace us. Look at these people that are coming in to replace us. And now you go to overcrowding. Well, does overcrowding have a history? Simple Google search, okay? So you go to perspectives. This is about this context about Holocaust. Let me read you just a simple sentence from there. The law against overcrowding in schools and universities passed on April 25th, 1933. It set strict limitations on the number of Jewish students permitted to attend both public and private schools and universities. The justification was overcrowding. We just don't have room for the Jews. So now you have to tell me, Tucker, are you that ignorant that you don't know what right-wing fascists have done for time immemorial to categorize the others as intruders that are here to replace you and that are dirty and leading to overcrowding, which is causing problems for you? And the very next part of that ideology is we should do something about it. So are you ignorant? Are you the most ignorant person on television, or are you purposely racist? Looking forward to your answer.
Yeah, looking forward to hearing, but I doubt he'll say anything because it wouldn't pay well for him to actually tell the truth about the situation, Jane.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, well, unfortunately, we're gonna take a break here. Look, first of all, everybody check out the Benjamin Dixon show. As you can tell here, fire. Okay, so Ben, thank you. I appreciate it, brother.
Thanks, James. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. When we come back, we've got a lot more stories for you guys. Brett Ehrlich's going to join us, and we got some serious stories left. But we have one you cannot miss. There's a new phenomenon of the right wing claiming to be super straight. I have never been more amused by a story. I mean, it'll be a crime if you miss that story. So stay right here. We'll be right back. I'll predict right here for you, Chris. I think Donald Trump will leave office before his term is up. He'll be humiliated, embarrassed, and I know him. He's not going to want to lose, and he's going to run for the hills.
You got that bet all day long.
Okay, let's get after it. Now, so look, Jake has made some good predictions, and this isn't good fun. I could not disagree more.
There's a little bromance between the two of them. You got that bet all day long, Janky, you. Oh, you stop. In the meantime, let's call him out on the damage.
No, but
I just got a Roku set. Did basically a little bit of channel surfing, and I was like, there we are.
Yeah.
There we are. And then I turned it on, and it was John and Brett on Damage Report making fun of me.
Oh no.
So you are so busted. I even took a picture of it, okay? They're talking about my predictions. I got a new prediction for you, John Iadarola.
You're doing a show that's blowing the doors off everybody.
Young Turks is the largest online news network, not a big deal. We're gonna rock the boat. We're gonna be counter-establishment. We're gonna tell people the truth to the best of our abilities. We're so sick of this corruption. We're not the robots on TV. I actually care about the news. Guilty, I care. Fourth day on Occupy Wall Street. Last night we launched Wolfpack. It's us pushing our ideas out there, trying to help the country in every way that we can, trying to make this place just a little bit better. Reporting from the Hillary-Bernie debate, I gotta be honest, you know what we do, we cover it for real. For us, this system isn't working. Free and fair elections.
And when he told the cops that day, when they came to drag her away, and he said, if you're gonna chain her, you're gonna chain me. If you're gonna arrest her, you're gonna arrest me.
Bartholomew Joseph Kyle. I do audio for the main show, The Young Turks. I also do audio for Post Game. I started in 2006. I met Cenk Uygur at the Iraq for Sale screening that was directed by Robert Greenwald. And watching that, I want to figure out a way to be part of something that's genuine and authentic.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Look at this. Cenk Uygur, Brett Ehrlich. Brett, great to have you here, brother.
Great to be here.
Actually, you're always secretly here, but so great to see you.
Great to be in the same place with the slightly better camera and the light in my face.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Brett produces the show daily and is on 1,000 shows as well. So if you happen to go to Twitch, you'll run into Brett. It doesn't matter if you went there for him or us, doesn't matter, you'll run into Brett. But check it out at twitch.tv/TYT Common Room, Happy Half Hour, and more. Speaking of Twitch, I'm gonna say one quick comment here before we go on. Great Heist wrote in, been with us for 2 months using Amazon Prime. By now, I think a lot of you know, if you got Amazon Prime, it's free for you on Twitch to subscribe to us, but we get the revenue, so it's a win-win and it helps a lot. Anyway, Great Heist wrote in, sub-anniversary. Sub-anniversary, badass. I appreciate it. It's a new song. It's a new song for a new hype train. All right, Brett, take it away.
All right, so here is a story. An elderly Asian woman turned the tables on an attacker in San Francisco Her name is Zhao Zhanji, and she's 76, and she told KPIX5 in Northern California, in the Northern California city, that she was waiting at a traffic light when a man allegedly punched her in the left eye out of nowhere. KPIX5 described it as just the latest attack against an Asian American person in the city. And here's what witnesses said. Witnesses said that Xi fought back after being punched in the face, picking up a piece of wood that she found on the roadside to fend the man off. She and the man were both taken to a hospital for treatment after the incident. And she had returned to her home by Wednesday night. But there was a local news reporter who was in the area and just happened to catch the aftermath of the event on camera. So here's what it looked like from his perspective. Take a look. So local reports say that, I mean, first of all, let's just acknowledge the fact that this guy apparently came up to her and decided that he could just get away with punching a 76-year-old woman. And local reporters also said that there was a second victim, which was an 83-year-old Asian man, and the same 39-year-old white guy is under investigation for both attacks. But he messed with the wrong lady, and here's a photo of her picking up, brandishing the stick that she apparently beat him off with. And this is one of those stories. It's a combination of a totally sad thing, and at the same time, I'm looking at her and going like, this woman is my hero. She should never have had to go through that, but given the circumstances, she stood up for herself and fought back.
Yeah, I don't think it's close question. If the right wing was intellectually consistent, they would actually agree with us that she's an American hero. I've got her in the running for Turk of the Year instantly. So guys, look, I'd like to quote warrior poets: "Don't start none, won't be none." So don't go looking for trouble. Don't do what the right wing does, go in the middle of a protest with weapons and all that nonsense, right? Not only don't start trouble, but don't look for trouble. But if trouble's at your doorstep and you're 70-some-odd-year-old woman and you just got punched in the eye by this random jerk and you see a stick, beat them with a stick, they will do. Okay, that's something that is a political analogy that one of our viewers once said, right? And it's symbolic and political in 99% of the cases that we use it. In this case, it was quite literal. But given that it was clearly self-defense, when I saw him on that stretcher bleeding and crying, that was a great moment in America. Look, symbolically, minorities have been hit and hit and hit and hit. And so this time around, this poor older woman, she's bleeding out of her eye. So when she hit him back, that is just seeing him on that stretcher with a woman who fought back and fought for herself right there, catharsis defined.
Yep, the woman's daughter talked with reporters, and her name is Dongmei Lee, and she told the outlet that her mother is, quote, very traumatized, and her eye was still bleeding later on Wednesday. She also has been unable to eat and is scared to leave her senior retirement home. So like, it's crazy. Like, think about the roller coaster that she has been on, from just standing at a stoplight to getting punched for zero reason whatsoever. And we've reported other times about the reasons reported why people think that they can just mess with older Asian people. They think they can get away with it. I think a lot of people have seen the video of a man just coming up from behind and just shoving an elderly Asian man. They think they can get away with it. So this woman went from that position of being assumed that she would be like that to picking up a stick and fighting back. And then when it all was over, after she went to the hospital and came out and her eye was still bleeding, now what's she gonna do? I mean, she was brave in the moment, but she's always gonna have to walk around with the thought in the back of her mind. And that's what's so insidious about hate crimes like this, is that, you're always going to be worried that something like this could happen, because just when you feel safe, you're back to where you were when you felt safe on that street corner, and someone can just come up behind you and start hitting you.
Look, I'm trying to contain myself. We just look, especially Asians in this country, picked on, and it's and look, unfortunately, it's been across the races, right? In terms of Asians getting picked on, and part of that way of thinking is the way a bully thinks. Like Brett explained, they think, no, they can't fight back. Well, come to find out, there's a different answer now. Okay, turns out they can fight back, and so this is what gets under people's skin. Like, how long are you going to press down on us before we can't breathe? So that's why when she picked up that stick, she picked it up for a lot of people in this country. And so, look, I hope you don't need family members who are Asian to be able to empathize. And I hope you don't need friends that are Asian to empathize. But I happen to have family members. My wife is originally from Taiwan. Obviously, my kids are half Chinese. And I grew up with friends who were Asian. So any one of us, just the thought of doing that to one of our grandmothers, no. So she's an absolute hero. She said to the guy as he's laying on the stretcher, "You bum, why did you hit me?" Okay, but next time, have it in the back of your mind, you might wind up on a stretcher too.
Yep. All right, we're gonna move on to this interaction between Dr. Fauci and Rand Paul. So let's get into that, because there were fireworks there.
Yeah.
All righty.
What studies do you have that people that have had the vaccine or have had the infection are spreading the infection? If we're not spreading the infection, isn't it just theater?
No, it's not.
The vaccine and you're wearing 2 masks. Isn't that theater?
No, that's not. Here we go again with the theater. Let's get down to the facts.
So that is Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci going at it, talking about political theater. One's accusing the other of theater. The other is no doubt executing political theater. But this is one of those discussions that's ongoing right now in terms of what happens if you get a vaccine and you theoretically have some heightened level of immunity that is higher than it was before you were vaccinated. But the CDC guidance still says that when you go out in public, various people in various situations should still wear masks. That was just the beginning of the interaction. We'll play you some of the rest of it so you can judge for yourself.
You're not hearing what I'm saying about variants. We're talking about wild type versus variants.
And what proof is there that there are significant reinfections with hospitalizations and death from the variants? None in our country, 0.
Well, because we don't have a prevalent of a variant yet. We're having one, can I finish? We're having 117 that's becoming more dominant.
Policy based on conjecture.
No,
it isn't based on conjecture. Variants, so you want people to wear masks for another couple years.
No.
You've been vaccinated and you parade around in 2 masks for show.
No,
you can't get it again. There's virtually 0% chance you're going to get it, and yet you're telling people that have had the vaccine, who have immunity. You're defying everything we know about immunity by telling people to wear masks to have been vaccinated. No. Instead, you should be saying there is no science to say we're going to have a problem from the large number of people being vaccinated. You want to get rid of vaccine hesitancy? Tell them they can quit wearing their mask after they get the vaccine. You want people to get the vaccine? Give them a reward instead of telling them that the nanny state's going to be there for 3 more years and you got to wear a mask forever. People don't want to hear it. There's no science behind it.
Well, let me just state for the record that masks are not theater. Masks are protective, and we
have immunity. They're theater. If you already have immunity, you're wearing a mask to give comfort to others. You're not wearing a mask because of any science.
I totally disagree with you.
So that's how it played out. Someone had to come in and break up the fight between Dr. Paul and Dr. Fauci. The one is an epidemiologist, and the other can tell you whether or not you can see this, row of letters on the wall. So just to kind of clarify, Centers for Disease Control, as reported by The Hill, advised that those who've been fully vaccinated against COVID-19 should wear a mask in public nonetheless. So Cenk, what are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, so this one's complicated. So a lot of times these days, the right wing makes it easy. They just make up stuff. And then we explain to you that that's not at all true. And then we give you the actual facts and we move on. So in this case, I have some sympathy for Rand Paul's position if he wasn't such a jerk. And I'll explain why him being a jerk is relevant too. So after you get vaccinated, it is very likely that you are safe and the people you're around are also safe. There's a study out of Israel saying that it is very unlikely for you to pass it on to others who have not yet been vaccinated. So, and that science is leading in that direction. Now, is Dr. Fauci being overly careful? That's my best guess, but I'm not a doctor, right? And I haven't studied this for a living. But I can understand why he's being overly careful because a lot of people aren't wearing masks before they get vaccinated. And so even if it was quote unquote theater, for public officials, that theater is actually politically relevant. Not in terms of electoral politics, but in terms of policy, because you want to encourage as much mask wearing as possible. Now, that's pre-vaccine. So if Rand Paul wanted to make the point in an intellectual way, in a respectful way, and an intellectually honest way, he would say, Dr. Fauci, aren't you being overly careful? And don't we want to, and so he mentioned the reward part, and that's fine. Don't we want to reward people for getting a vaccine? So shouldn't we calibrate this differently as opposed to, oh, you're doing for a political stunt, it's the Democrats who are, obsessed with the mask. Well, what's the message you're sending by framing it that way? The message you're sending is masks are not important, they're only theater. Don't listen to the doctors and the scientists that tell you to wear one. And in a country that is still overwhelmingly not vaccinated, that is a very bad message to send out.
Yes, and we are setting records. It was reported today, there was an announcement by President Biden who said that we will hit our 100 million vaccination mark, which was his goal for 100 days. We've hit it at day 58, so we're ahead of schedule. But with Rand Paul, with me, it's always like, God, your dad had so much more integrity. Like Ron Paul, Dr. Ron Paul was the guy who you'd ask a question, and yes, he's a libertarian, and yes, he's one of those like fundamentalist libertarian, for lack of a better term, where he was just gonna give you the answer according to his libertarian ideology. It was, 5 minutes talking to him, it makes some sense. 15 minutes talking to him, you're like, what's happening? An hour in, you're like, oh, that's nuts. For me, that's my personal appraisal of it. But at least I knew what I was dealing with. With Rand Paul, I just have to, the son realizes that his dad could never be president. And so he knows that he has to play some extra level of politics in order to become president. And he thought he had a shot last go around and he got annihilated by Trump, but he still wants to stay in there and make the points and stay relevant. That's what's frustrating with Rand Paul. With Dr. Fauci, like I understand that he is the leading epidemiologist and he deals with this stuff every single day, all day. And he's just coming out of the last administration where the president just did not listen to him at all. And everything the president was doing was utterly politically motivated. And so at every turn, Dr. Fauci was shot down. And now he has people that are listening to him. But he still has people like Rand Paul out there who bury their head in the sand when it comes down to the very real fact that it makes sense for you to take your mask off when you're vaccinated in certain situations. But it really doesn't make sense for you to absolutely take it off anywhere. And then add to that fact, yes, there are gonna be people who just don't wear their masks, they're not vaccinated, they're gonna tell you that they're vaccinated. And when you're at the supermarket, you're gonna look around and not know what to do. And there is some element of theater in that, but that element of theater is dwarfed by the theater that's been going on for the last year and a half from the right wing that is all about pretending that they're fighting for Americans' rights, when in reality, all they're doing is making people unnecessarily vulnerable to this already deadly disease. That's what's frustrating.
100%. Look, last thing is that risk. Look, everybody's got a different risk tolerance, right? And so, but pre-vaccination and post-vaccination makes a giant difference because pre-vaccination, you're not just taking a risk with yourself, you're taking a risk on behalf of others. And that's the unacceptable part, right? So You want to be outside and you're not anywhere near other people, you're not wearing a mask, nothing, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with that. But you're gonna go inside without a mask and you haven't been vaccinated, you're actively putting other people in danger. And so that's where a mandate makes sense, because it's the government protecting people. It's not to try to take your freedom away. It's like saying, oh, well, I punched a guy in the face and you took the freedom of my fist away from me. Well, yeah, we're allowed to do that. There are limits to so-called freedom if you use it to hurt other people. But post-vaccination, everybody's gonna have a different risk tolerance, and that you might say, hey, listen, I'm not comfortable, even though you're vaccinated and I'm vaccinated, without a mask inside. Then you do you, no problem, then wear the mask. But if everybody's vaccinated and you're vaccinated, and we have increasing evidence and increasing scientific backing for not wearing masks, not causing a bigger problem, then we gotta be okay with people not wearing masks. So, and I'm just saying it's okay in either direction post-vaccination, right? And because then at that point you're putting your feelings on other people. But even then, there's nothing wrong with being respectful. So like right now, when I go outside, if I'm walking and I'm not near anyone, I don't have a mask on. But if I see someone coming and they look like they're gonna be uncomfortable, even though we're wide open and they're 100 feet away, like they're moving towards the street or something to get out of the way, then I immediately put a mask on. Like I would have crossed the street anyway, but I'll cross the street and put a mask on. Why? To make them comfortable. You know why? Because I'd like to think I'm a decent person. I don't want to make them uncomfortable, even if I think across the street is perfectly safe, right? So can we be mindful of each other? Is that too much to ask for a right winger? I don't know, probably.
Yeah, and then one last fact, we're not gonna play the video, but Fauci does explain his concern is that there are variants, and you're anywhere between 2 and 8 times more likely to be susceptible to either a variant or the original strain, or to a variant if you have been vaccinated than the way you're vulnerable to the original strain. That makes sense. But the variants are what he's concerned about. That's it. We have to take.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Brett, that's where I think, my opinion, and it's not anywhere near as weighty as a doctors or a scientist, is that he's being overly careful. The variants are not necessarily here yet. We don't know what the variants can do. So should a public health official be really careful? Yes, that's his job. His job is to be careful, right? But you have to, of course, like I said, you have to have your own risk tolerance. So if I'm vaccinated, for me personally, I'm not going to be that concerned about a variant that might or might not harm me that isn't here yet. So, but that's on everybody, and you got to go figure that out for yourself.
All right, we got to take a break.
What to do? You take them out of the office and hit them with a stick a couple times. They will do.
Back on Young Turks during the break. This just came across what did they used to call it, Brett?
Wire.
Came across the wire, but there was another one too, like the telescope.
The teletype, the telex or something?
Yeah, it's something like that. It's not all right, we'll look it up. Anyway, this came on Twitch. Brett's wife, that's their handle, gave 600 bits and called #Stimmy for Strimmy.
That's insane, especially considering like right before we came back for this hour, she was like, wait a second, grabbed my face and wiped chocolate off of it. Like she's always looking out for the stream. Chocolate on the face. Don't know how. Chocolate on the face.
Oh, that's what Strimmy is. Because I was going to ask what Strimmy is, right? So Stimmy for Strimmy. Oh, okay, that's the stream. Okay, I love it. I want that hashtag to explode. Put that on a hype train. All right. Little Mac McGee wrote in, he gave 1,000 bits. You're awesome, man. Appreciate it, brother. He said, I've dealt with enough bullies in my life to be feeling very satisfied right now about the woman who fought back. Yeah, hear you on that, brother. Trish the Dish gave out so many bits, we lost count. So thank you, Trish. Pluggy has been with us for Plugi, 9 months with Amazon Prime. Says, have some Bezos bucks from Plug the Dungeon Dragon. The Dungeon Dragon could be fun or a little scary, or maybe both. Okay, Ronchi writes in, does Glenn think that Snowden committed treason? He seems to be taking law enforcement's explanation at face value. Interesting bit of irony there. Ragnagen, who's been with us for 7 months and sounds like they'd be on a Netflix show where the Danes and the Saxons are fighting, says, oh, signed up for 2 more months in advance. Oh, wow, that's awesome, thank you. Almond Joy has been with us for 2 months and simply wrote, yay. Very fitting for someone filled with joy. And then Proud Volleyball Mom Dragon wrote, yay, 4-month anniversary. So there are a lot of yays going around for the Strimmy today. Tumbles gifted a sub. The One Wing Dragon gifted a sub. He's only got 1 wing and he's still gifting things to you guys. And Ruggedly Handsome gifted 5 subs. So also ruggedly generous, apparently. I like this random comment from YouTube Super Chat. Tony D says, we never talk about the Russian anchor babies. Well, that's true, but I didn't know it was a thing. Maybe that's why we don't talk about it. I like how random that comment is. I might have missed it. Okay, anyways, all right, we gotta come back. Hit the join button below. Young Turks coming in with that music. There's a combination of Seinfeld and 80s porn. Let's just keep it real. All right, Cenk Uygur, Brett Ehrlich with you guys. All right, well, it's a fitting bridge, if you will, to the next story, Brett.
Yep, shout out to the level 4 hype train now. Okay, here we go. There is a new trend on TikTok that's going viral right now where people are identifying as a new sexual orientation known as super straight. No one asked these people what kind of sexual orientation they had. They just decided they were going to volunteer as super straight. The movement, which started on TikTok, has quickly become popularized on 4chan, because of course it is, and is now being used by far-right trolls as a way to mock and invalidate trans people and their identities. Let's take a look at the clip that started it all.
Yo guys, I made a new sexuality now, actually. It's called super straight, okay? Since straight people or straight men as myself, I get called transphobic because I wouldn't date a trans woman. You know, they're like, would you date a trans woman? I'm like, no, why? That's a female. No, like that's not a real woman to me. Like I want real woman. No, you're just transphobic. So now I'm super straight. I only date the opposite gender women that are born women. So you can't say I'm transphobic now because that's just my sexuality, you know?
So like, my position has been and always will be, have sex with anyone you want to, as long as they consent to it. It's weird that his weird defensive posture of like So you can't be mad at me that I don't want to have sex with trans women. It's like, I was never mad at you for that in the first place. Do you feel like you need to come up with this new term in order to like set yourself apart? I mean, the right-wing troll doth protest too much, methinks.
Yeah, I don't know that we're doing this story justice for how hilarious it is. So it's got a serious component. We'll talk about it in a second. But when my 8-year-old daughter walks into the room and says, "I didn't just eat the last cookie," I got news for you. First of all, that cookie's gone. Okay. Second of all, I have an excellent sense of who might be the culprit. So when you walk into a room and declare, "I am super straight," I probably got news for you. And it ain't that you're super straight. I like the need to declare that is so revelatory, right? So I've never seen anyone spring into a room saying, "I'm not gay," that didn't have something running through their heads. Okay, and so now that there's the serious component is that, look, guys, I don't know if anybody. I mean, I don't know if any part of this has a serious component. Okay, but like, who asked you? Right? I don't know. And by the way, if this is a real phenomenon, then I'm against that phenomenon too, of like people saying you must have sex with certain people. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that we were asking for preemptive pledges, right? So I don't agree with preemptive pledges. Jake, would you have sex with a Bulgarian woman? Likely, but I don't know. I've never met a Bulgarian woman. I don't know, right? I didn't know that was a thing, right? But for them to, when no one is asking, to jump out of the bushes and be like, "Don't try to get me to have sex with that attractive trans woman because I won't do it." Okay, but dude, nobody was trying. I mean, I think you're probably having a decent amount of trouble with any kind of woman. I don't know that there were a lot of people offering, and you were going to get to choose, and you said, "No, no, no, no. I know everybody wants me to have sex with that attractive trans woman, but I won't do it. I won't do it." Okay, if you say so.
Did we brainstorm other names in the meantime for this sexual orientation? Like, I feel like we could do better than super straight. Like super straight, it seems like a superhero who and all the people that I know whom I would describe as super straight, not one of them feels the need to go out there and be like, "Yo, I am super straight." It's like you just are who you are. And like, if I guarantee you that this guy would be attracted to if he likes cis hetero women and sees a trans woman who looks, in that guy's interpretation, like a cis hetero woman, he would in that moment be attracted to her. And then he wouldn't be like that. So I think that would disprove the fact that this guy is actually, as he describes it, super straight. Because how would you know? Describing yourself as this has nothing to do with your physical level of attraction. It has to do with your political ideology. So that disqualifies this from being an actual sexual orientation, because you would have to, how would you know? Except in the moment, you were attracted to that person. But then your political proclivities, not your sexual instincts, kicked in and were like, "No, no, no, I can't do this. That's not okay." And people do that all the time. That's a kind of dynamic that factors in when people are talking about sex before marriage. They're attracted to someone, but their religion tells them they can't do it. But trying to chalk this up as some kind of like sexual orientation / I'm not gonna have sex with these people, get out of jail free card is ridiculous.
Yeah, look, there's some great logical points there that Brett just made there. So in essence, what they seem to be saying is, we are not going to have sex with these women, even though we find them attractive.
Like super hot, and we're not.
Okay.
Even though they're the hottest women we've ever seen, we're not gonna do it because we're super straight.
Okay, but let's acknowledge what you just said, right? Like, I'm like super attracted to them, but I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it for other reasons, okay? All right. I mean, look, by the way, again, nobody's putting a gun to your head. And nobody's even asking, let alone putting a gun to your head. And if liberals ever get to a point where they're demanding that people have sex with certain kinds of other people, then I'm gonna be on your side. I'm gonna say no. Okay, because I actually believe in #freedom. Okay, so don't worry. We don't even want to sleep with you, let alone making you sleep with us. Okay, so whoever us is. So now, look, I want to break it down a little bit further. Another good point that Brett made is, like, you don't see George Clooney and Brad Pitt going out there and being like, hey guys, I'm definitely straight. Right? In fact, they're very progressive on these issues. Why? Because they have enormous confidence. They don't have to prove it to anyone. Right? Nobody's asking, like, everybody knows it. They don't have to go around pretending like, oh, I'm the straightest guy you've ever met, okay? So it reminds me a little bit of the guys buying Magnum condoms. Like, if you say so, okay? Anyway, so, and then, but the super straight has a second problem. It's SS, right? So that's the initials. Now, if you say, hey, Jake, oh my God, you guys are stretching to find a Nazi angle here, what the hell, etc. No, it's not us. It's a post on 4chan. So 4chan is the right-wing trolls, etc. And they're saying that they love it because it's of SS, and they're pushing it out because it's SS. So for at least some of them, I guarantee you, it's the internet. A lot of people don't know, right? And they might be calling themselves super straight, and they have no idea what's going on 4chan, right? But some of them do know, and they're trying to head you in that direction, and they love it, right? And by the way, this is something we've talked about in the past, and there's a lot of data behind this. An entry point for extreme right-wing ideology is misogyny, because it's an easy way to get to 15-year-old boys and sometimes boys that are way older than that, but have never matured. Like, oh, doesn't it suck that you can't get laid? And first things they're like, yes, that's what God is, and it's definitely not your fault, right? Oh, definitely not. No, it's somebody else's fault. Oh, yeah, great, give me someone to blame. And the 4chan folks are like, yes, I'll give you someone to blame. Go down a list: women, Jews, blacks, Latinos, Muslims. Oh, if it wasn't for the Muslims getting all the women.
Right.
Is that a problem in America? Is that really a problem in America? Okay, but they get them to believe that because it's so intoxicating to say that you don't have personal responsibility. That's the great irony of the right wing. They don't want personal responsibility. They want to be able to say, oh, I would have been all these things and I would have gotten all the girls if it wasn't for those dastardly progressives.
Yeah. There's one little extra wrinkle that I do want to bring up is they have developed, first of all, it got banned, the hashtag got banned, and the guy who put this up got banned from TikTok, but they do have their own pride flag. And they tweeted, what is super straight? This is a new sexuality that means you only attracted to what we just said, cisgender women or men. And then their flag is black and orange, which it has been pointed out is also the color scheme for Grindr, which is the gay dating app. So, you know, it's a little on the nose. I know it's also Halloween, which is, you know, it is also the Grindr colors. So that's all I'm gonna say.
Well, I mean, come on, guys. I mean, you're gonna do something that's anti-gay, but you're gonna take the colors of Grindr. I mean, if you say so. If you say so, okay. So I mean, you guys are so obvious. You're so obvious. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. People are closeted and they come out later, and we believe in redemption. So brothers and sisters, don't worry, you'll have redemption on the flip side when you get to the other place and you've matured, etc. Whatever is going on in your head. And if you actually are straight, but you got riled up into hate and stuff, and you thought like, oh, this will show them. Okay, we're open to redemption there too, but not until you actually are not hating on other people. But look, I'll give two more things here. This because now again, this is a serious point. Look, here I actually don't agree with banning them, and that's a really interesting debate. Maybe we'll have that on another show. But I believe in countering them with mocking speech, as I'm doing right here. You got speech, I got speech, brother. Okay, you got colors, Grindr's got colors. Hey, look at that, it's a match. Anyway, so swipe left, you got it. Anyways, look, I give you the example I often give that I know it's a little strange for Americans because there's barely any Turks here, and so it kind of feels weird. Why are we talking about this tiny little ethnicity? It's just because it's such a good example here. In Germany, Turks are an ethnic minority and often oppressed and discriminated against. If you have Turkish pride in Germany, that makes perfect sense. In Turkey, Turks are the majority and have often oppressed other minorities. If you have Turkish pride in Turkey, it could create a problem because that means the majority is rising up against the minority. You see, context matters. So when you say, hey, I'm just proud to be super straight. No, wait a minute. Straight people in this country have not been an oppressed minority. If you think that's the case, then you don't know any history, you don't know any context, and you don't know the current day either. Are people super straight men being beat to death in the streets? No. Are trans women? Yes. So I know that you're desperate to be a victim, but there are actual victims of actual violence in this country, and they're not in your category. I know you're solicitous of being in that category, but you don't really know what you're asking for. You just want the victimhood without the pain. So this is your silly way of doing it. Understand that straight white men in this country have never been the oppressed minority, and framing it like they are makes you sound super silly. Sorry that that's also SS.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we got people whining about cancel culture. We got some updates on some other stuff that's been going on. So don't you go away.
So now I'm super straight.
Beta.
You know, the funny thing is I've been telling you guys about Aspiration and their new promotion, basically, which is a free lifetime membership to TYT. I kept thinking, like, wait, have we ever had that? And then today it got confirmed for me. No, we've never had that. So whoever wins that would be the first TYT lifetime member ever. Whoa, drops. Okay, aspiration.com/TYT. Now, you know they're progressive. You know they don't put your money in fossil fuels and all that. You know you get more money back. You're saving money. You're saving the planet. You're doing all that. Conscious Coalition, 3 to 5% cash back. You know what I like? Cash. You know what I like? It coming back to me. Okay, so aspiration.com/TYT, and you also have a chance at becoming the first lifetime TYT member. All right, speaking of membership. So on YouTube, you know the levels, right? $1.99 is per month. You know, it's a very affordable rate. That just shows, hey, look, we're on your side, and we love you for it. And we see, you know, you got your badges, and I see your names when we do the show, etc. And so it's a great way of helping and saying, yeah, I like truth, as opposed to the propaganda I get from the mainstream media or the right wing. It's a way of saying, yeah, I'd like to fight for change, and you guys seem to be doing that. And sometimes you have a little bit of success too. I want to be part of that. That's how you're a part of it. At the $4.99 level, same exact thing, but you also get the post games that we do every day. Brett and I are going to do one for you guys today. That's like an extra half an hour of content and that's called Essentials. At the premium level, $9.99, you get all the Young Turks videos and all of our shows, including the specials, anytime you want. Plus, again, like it just shows, hey, you know what? I'm chipping in here to get that truth and change. So we appreciate it either way. We love you for it. If you're watching on YouTube, you hit the join button below. It's really easy to do. And so I just explained the YouTube levels. Of course, on our website, it's super simple too, tyt.com/join to make that happen. So now, there were so many comments here, and I got turned around because of the telling you about membership. Okay, proud member of the Squirrel Squad. I didn't know we had a Squirrel Squad. Says in our member section, Squirrel. Oh, right, that's right. There are many ways to be a contrarian. There is no direct link to supporting domestic terrorists. That is a choice. So, and a curious one. Interesting point. Theater Goddess makes a good point, and especially appropriate to her name. Well, masks have a long history in theater. But the ones we should all be wearing are more of a practical bit of costuming to differentiate the good guys from the idiots. And I never thought about it that way, but in a sense, it does help you, differentiate people pre-vaccine, right? You're like, okay, like now I know who to avoid. I'm not kidding. Like, not just because of social distancing, but when I see pre-vaccine people going around without masks, I think that guy's probably an idiot, and I don't want to talk to him.
So now I'm super straight.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Brett with you guys. There's two breaking stories. First is Central Committee has re-upped their membership on Twitch, and they say 8 months and level 5 hype poggers. Later, Brett would fill me in on what poggers means. Okay, now to the actual breaking news from Brett.
And shout out to Mike from PA from Central Committee. Thank you for re-upping your membership and for coming on TYT that one time. All right, here we go. So here's an update that people were asking about earlier when the sheriff's spokesperson, Jay Baker, said that thing that got everybody kind of up in arms because he reported on, one thing is he reported on the shooter in the Atlanta area massage business shootings and said that that guy had had a bad day. And then also it was reported that he had posted a Twitter image of an anti-Chinese coronavirus related t-shirt that he had bought. And we ourselves even had a poll and still do at tyt.com/polls asking if this guy would lose his job. And the update is, according to Nicole Carr, a reporter, says new confirmed with Cherokee Sheriff that Captain Baker will no longer be spokesperson on spa shootings case. They're evaluating what his future at the sheriff's office looks like and consulting the DA's office to see if they should hand their portion of the case to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. And she says, see you at 6, so there will be updates. But there you go, that is the update. Jay Baker, the spokesperson who referred to the Atlanta area massage business shooter as saying he had had a bad day and ordered those shirts and posted about them, has been kind of suspended from being a spokesperson just for this case.
Okay, that's not that much of like it's suspended from being a spokesperson for this case. That's a lot of caveats. So we'll see if anything else happens. But mainly, of course, this was the Young Turks audience driving change. In our poll, 85% of you had voted that he would not lose his job as a spokesperson. Obviously, they saw that and they're like, oh yeah, Young Turks audience, we'll prove you wrong. I'm sure that's what drove it. But look, being serious for a second, I know the right wing will think, oh, that's cancel culture. Just because he thought that the mass murderer was just having a bad day and he framed his confession as basically a courageous act of taking responsibility, and all the things that he did it to frame it on the side of the killer. And it turns out that he had the anti-Asian shirts, etc. And for that, you're going to cancel a guy, kind of temporarily, from just one case and being a spokesperson. Okay. Well, yeah, but guys, so are you okay with someone who has clearly anti-Asian sentiment going around having a badge and a gun and having incredible power over Asians? Are you like, do you think like, yeah, what's the big deal? So what? The shirt was clearly anti-Asian, and no question about it. Even had a racist way of saying China printed on the shirt, right? So do you think like, yeah, but I'm not Asian, so I don't care if he wrongfully arrests an Asian or does something else to someone who's Asian. I like that he's on my side and he's for white people. I don't know what you guys think. But like, is that something that really bothers you? Like, oh my God, that anti-Asian guy can't be a cop doing the things that we want him to do anymore. So I don't understand why you can't see it. It isn't like we're worried about our feelings. We're worried that that guy has power over people that are in that community, and we're worried about how he's gonna use his spokesperson or not. He's a police officer, and that's what we're concerned about.
Right, and specifically, it seems like in the meantime, they are just taking him off the high-profile cases. So one of the things about racism is there's all these people who say it's not racist if he's not shouting the N-word at the top of his lungs, and everyone with a brain points out, no, it's that stuff that's everywhere all the time, and they get so frustrated about what is the essential truth about racism. It's everywhere. It's woven into everything. And so all I'm doing is pointing it out so you can see where it manifests and be aware of where it manifests and where the effect happens and whom it affects. And that's it. And the Georgia spokespeople, they got in trouble. And immediately they should say he is being suspended from any kind of spokespersonship until we figure out what's going on. And then we need to make sure that we check to find out what's going on. Because right now they're just like, this is an optics thing, but is it a policy thing? How can we make it a policy thing? That's what we need to be checking in on.
Yeah, and last thing is, guys, I don't know if a racist plumber needs to be fired. It's an interesting topic, but doesn't come up often. But a racist cop that's got all that power and authority, and by the way, is almost never held accountable. No, we can't have racist cops because then you have unequal justice. And the fact that the right wing can't agree to that, it's just stunning. They're saying, no, I don't mind the guy with the badge and the gun and has all the power in the world being able to do whatever the hell he wants to black people, Asian people, etc. Because I want us to be in power, and I want us to have power over you to maybe do injustice. That's a stunning admission to me. And we all walk around like it's normal. Like, oh yeah, of course. Oh, we're against that kind of cancel culture. No, canceling someone for their opinions in the context of a newspaper is totally different than saying, hey, I don't want that racist guy going and doing God knows what to people he hates with the power that we gave him as a society, as a police officer.
Yeah, it's super frustrating. And I get it. And so we don't have a lot of time, but like they rely, it's funny because you can compare it to like Reconstruction in the South. That's what they're taking their entire cues from, which was like, listen, we had people who were trying to execute Reconstruction in the South really had an agenda for making it a better place and getting rid of the legacy of slavery. And that lasted for a bit, not a long bit. Why? Because the people who were there were like, we're gonna make it exhausting to call us out. We're gonna make you feel evil and make it too hard a lift for you to eradicate our power structure. And so in many respects, and in lasting ways, the North said, all right, that's too much. We're just gonna make certain things illegal like that. And all, it took 100 years for a Civil Rights Act. After that, it took 100 years, and that's what they're relying on.
Yeah, Brett, I like how our polls are now like the markets. They're reacting in real time. Will he get fired has gone from 14% to 16% as we spoke. People are going, oh yeah, maybe, yeah. I'm going yes. Okay, all right, guys, the post game is gonna be mental. So we have really exciting stories, including what the talk should do with Sharon Osbourne. I think it's super interesting. Hit the join button below. We'll see you over there.
We are on to something that is going to be amazing, but what we need is your help.
The number one problem is there's too much power in too few hands.
Every single problem that we have can be traced back to dark money.
They take large donors, they serve large donors.
So these handful of gatekeepers try to dictate everything.
Like all of you already know, they don't work for you, they work for their donors. So fire them and hire people who will only work for you that say no corporate back money.
We are going to change the way we elect candidates in this country.
Uncorrupted Democrats. We're gonna fight for the issues and win on policy.
This is incredibly personal. We need free health care for everyone.
We're fighting for $15 minimum wage, single payer health care, debt-free college, and we are gonna get money out of politics once and for all.
I've taken a public pledge not to accept any corporate money.
Because the last thing we're gonna do is go into another presidential election and run a corporatist against a populist candidate.
At some point, the buck needs to stop, and it's gonna stop with us. It's gonna stop with Justice Democrats.
So who are we?
People who do not take corporate PAC money.
We're relying on small donors.
99.9% of our contributions came from people.
You're a Justice Democrat, so you don't take any corporate PAC money.
I'm not influenced by money. As a Justice Democrat, I made that pledge.
Not a betting. Absolutely no.
I will go to Congress unbossed and unbought.
We try to create a government which works for all of us.
That is what America's about, and that's what a representative democracy should be about.
We are just getting warmed up here.
Vote for uncorrupted Democrats. The fight starts now, it starts today, and it starts with you.
I've been honest with him. Like, yeah, I was upset with you and I shouldn't have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
Did you know that more than 20% of the world's oxygen comes from the Amazon? Why? Because of trees. I know what you're thinking. Of course! So what do we want to do? We want to plant more trees so we can save the climate. It's quite literal. So that's what leads to our new partner, Plant Your Change. Love it. It's so easy. What they do is you take the credit or debit cards you already have and you plug it into the system. And if you so choose, you get to round up every purchase to the nearest dollar and they plant a tree for you, okay? Now you could also choose if you wanna do it on only certain kinds of purchases or only so often, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But literally every cent makes a difference here. It's Plant Your Change. And if you wanna know more information, just go to tyt.com/trees. Let's go save the planet together.
Now, top. No. No. No.
Today, a terrible day for the internet, a terrible day for America. The internet as we know it is not going to exist anymore.
A real dark day for information and yet another way that they're bleeding out the democracy.
We're now going to have these gatekeepers of information deciding what we can and can't see, and that's what scares me the most.
Whether you're conservative or progressive or anywhere in the middle, this is the one thing we should all agree to. Protect the internet, because the establishment is coming for it. Don't let them destroy the internet.
I like my meat tight. Tighten up my meat.
So now, I'm super straight.
I like my meat tight. Tighten up my meat.
So now, I'm super straight.
So we got two fun stories for you guys, or interesting stories for you guys. But before we get there, I got a note from our wonderful moderator saying that some people are not happy with my comments about going maskless post-vaccine. Everybody, look, you guys make decisions you want to make. And I've told you 1,000 times, I'm not a doctor or a scientist, do your own research on it. I'm telling you my opinion, right? So from what I have read, you will not get it. And it is very, very, very likely you will not pass it. Okay, if you say, hey, I'm not comfortable yet with that, okay, that's super fair, right? But I am comfortable with it. I don't know, to me, what I've read, the science is you're not gonna pass it and you're not gonna get it. So then why are we having masks on? So I think that people just need time to get there. And I'm open to being wrong. And so if I'll read more, I'll check it out, but that's my reading of it now. So I hear that you're uncomfortable with my opinion, but that wouldn't be new.
Like, yeah. And we all like, it's good. It can't be different. Like, I don't know. I used to, back in the day, used to go to Japan all the time. And it's just the case that people wear masks and there's nothing political about it. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember we had a viewer who sent a bunch of masks to the studio. Karen sent them like 3 years ago. And that's the one that I use. It's the Harajuku mask that she sent from Japan.
That's awesome.
And she's great, fantastic. We met her, she's fantastic. Anyways, but like I wear that mask. And when you go to Japan, it's no one's like, you're wearing a mask, you idiot. It's just like, oh, that person's wearing a mask, that person's not. That mask is adorable. It has like a little bear face on it and looks like you have a bear face. That's it. Right now, it's so hyper political. And for me, even after I get vaccinated, I'm gonna wear a mask when I go out. Like they were saying, just to make people feel comfortable. I'm also terrified of things. So as Dr. Fauci said, like you don't necessarily have immunity from those variants. And there's like 2 in New York that he's worried about that haven't killed anyone or anything like that. But like, I'm nervous, so I'm probably gonna wear a mask. And that's how I am. For me, all these answers seem very obvious, but to other people, they don't seem as obvious. And we're in this, like, a lot of folks are in like this default setting of like, get your guns up. And it's, I don't know, but that's just my personal take on it. And I did see someone without a mask when I went to go pick up food. And I just had to tell myself, he's 65 and over, he's probably vaccinated. That's probably what's happening. That puts my mind at ease.
Yeah, and so we did a walk with the family yesterday, and we had our masks on. And as we're going around the corner and looking at the restaurants that now in LA they've opened up so they can have quarter capacity, right? And there's people in there eating without masks. Now, would I do that pre-vaccine? My wife is post-vaccine, I'm pre-vaccine. Would I go do that? No, I wouldn't do it because that would put me in a lot of danger. Do I know everybody in there is already vaccinated? I mean, of course I don't know, right? They might be, maybe that's why they're in there without a mask, but I don't know that, so I'm not gonna go in. And it's a personal choice of mine, right? Post-vaccine, why wouldn't I eat indoors? So, but that's, again, like if Brett comes in with a mask, I'm not gonna be like, whoa, that's weird, dude. No, of course, everybody gets to have their own opinion on it and their own risk tolerance post-vaccine. Pre-vaccine is super duper clear. You go inside without masks, you're definitely putting yourself and others into danger. Post-vaccine, like the worst case scenario is that it's not super clear, right? But the weight of the evidence is that we're supposed to be fine. All right, so let's do the other stories.
All right, let's talk the talk about Sharon Osbourne and the updates. We have some updates about the ongoing controversy surrounding Sharon Osbourne and the talk. She had a very confrontational interaction that was outrageous during one of the episodes. And in the wake of it, the talk decided, hey, we're going on hiatus. We will not talk anymore. And even though the show is not happening, that wouldn't stop Sharon Osbourne from going on Entertainment Tonight to explain herself, how it all came to be, and how she might leave the show and that she was set up. Take a look.
Sharon said what unfolded on air felt like a betrayal from her co-host after a pact they made in February.
There was a situation in February. Carrie Ann was given a question to ask Elaine, and Carrie Ann didn't want to ask it, but it came from the producers to ask Elaine. And it was, if black people can use the N-word, why can't white people use the N-word?
I would love to hear what you have to say.
Which is a very naive question to ask. We all know why. So Elaine got very upset with her response. Carrie Ann started to cry. So we agreed we would never surprise each other with questions if we thought the other one hadn't been prepped. And we said we will never put ourselves in this situation again where we set each other up. So we all agreed as women, got your back. I finished saying what I'm saying, and then Cheryl asked me these questions, which I didn't know, and they were written questions, and then Elaine's reading her questions.
Stand up for anti-racism.
And I'm like, I've been set up. It's the cancel culture, isn't it? Throw her under the bus. And our two showrunners were crying, and then they said that we were told to ask these questions from the executives. The executives.
Who?
They wouldn't give me names.
So there you go. Just one little wrinkle of something that was not in there was when Sharon points out that the Meghan Markle interview with Oprah, which set this whole thing off and resulted in Piers Morgan storming off his show and Sharon Osbourne defending him. That happened on CBS, and this is a CBS show, and Sharon showing solidarity with Piers was the reason that Sharon says that the executives decided to, quote, go after her. We have no proof of that or anything, but that's essentially the setup. Cenk, what do you think?
This particular story about Sharon Osbourne is not about race, in my opinion. It's about entitlement. She does a show called The Talk, and she says an unexpected question that prompts a conversation blows her mind. She can't believe it. She was set up with a perfectly benign question about race, in my opinion. She doesn't find it benign because of her opinions. But it's, for me, it'd be a super easy answer. If it's a hard answer for her, well, then it's a more interesting conversation, and you should talk about it on The Talk even more, right? Not less. So on the one hand, I get the fellow co-hosts don't ambush each other. I get it, right? I don't think it's a foreign concept. I get why they would want to do that as colleagues. On the other hand, saying we as people on television pretending to have honest conversations will not have a conversation about anything that isn't pre-produced and pre-approved seems incredibly inauthentic and entitled to me.
Right. So that question that Carrie Anaba, I think is her name, that is referenced, that sparked the pack, is such a horrible question to be fed, and it itself is a ridiculous question that totally reeks of. And I have worked with network producers. Some of them are fantastic. Others think that good television is just people yelling at each other and being angry at each other, and that's it. And I've told them that is the death of discourse for all those reasons. But this question about Piers Morgan was a valid question. Like, it wasn't a crazy question to ask. What do you think about that? Why do you defend him? And then go into what being racist is. And I'm gonna read you the apology that an excerpt from the apology that Sharon Osbourne shared on Twitter. She says, I've always been embraced with so much love and support from the Black community, and I have deep respect and love for the Black community. To anyone of color that I offended, or to anyone that feels confused or let down, I'm truly sorry. Fine. Then she says, I panicked. I felt blindsided, got defensive, and allowed my fear and horror of being accused of being racist take over. Then she says, I'm not perfect. I'm still not learning. And the rest of us, blah, blah, we learn, we get better. Okay. A lot of people, when they panic, they freeze and they don't talk. They say nothing, but they don't suddenly say like weird racist things that, what does it expose? For her, it seems like what it exposed was the truth about her sense of entitlement, and that her biggest fear is being called racist, which in the list of fears is not a particularly scary one. Being a victim of racism is much scarier. Being ignorant of racism, when you're someone who can then be further victimized by racism, that's very scary. And then of course, flying spiders and tigers, those are also scary. But this, like being called a racist, not even being called a racist, but someone asking you a question about what racism means to you in the context, as Cenk says, of a talk show where the point is to discuss things exactly like this. Come on, that shouldn't scare you. And it definitely shouldn't turn you into someone being like, and as she said, she called herself literally their sacrificial lamb. Come on, you're Sharon Osbourne. Your husband bites the heads off bats. You're not just some victim out there sitting there defenseless against the elements.
Yeah, no, that's why I say like entitled, privileged, like, no, I get to make millions of dollars doing a show called The Talk without talking about anything that makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like that, yeah. The things I believe the producers set her up 100%. I believe that the producers, there was pressure from someone being like, oh, she's gonna go hard on freaking Oprah. You're not Oprah, put her in her place. I'm guarantee that happened. And I guarantee that the people were also at the talk were thinking, it's always us or The View, and we need a Megyn, right? And Sharon's our Megyn this week. But here's the thing, I also believe what I know about Sharon Osbourne. If you look into her past, here's a history of Sharon Osbourne. According to Yashar Ali, who wrote this on Substack, Sharon Osbourne would frequently refer to her then co-host Julie Chen, who's Chinese American, as wonton and slanty eyes, according to multiple sources, including former co-host Leah Remini. Osbourne also referred to her former co-host and co-executive producer Sarah Gilbert, who is a lesbian, as a P-word licker, a fish eater, also in multiple sources, including Leah Remini. Holly Robinson Pete, she tweeted, I'm old enough to remember when Sharon complained that I was too, quote, ghetto for the talk. Then I was gone. I bring this up now because I was mortified watching the disrespectful, condescending tone she took with her co-host. So like, yeah, the history, it was convenient that they essentially had a Meghan McCain lying around and this happened. You were set up? No, this is all part of what makes network daytime TV tick. And you're just angry that this time you were the heel.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. They want to be able to have all the privileges of being a heel, but they don't want to be exposed as the heel. But all of this is, in my opinion, easily cured. Why don't you all come back on and have a real talk about it? Instead, everybody's going to scurry, and none of them should be proud, right? So for folks who want accountability, then you should want to get out there and talk it through, whether it's Sharon Osbourne or any of the other hosts or the producers. I mean, this is literally your job. You're not dentists, you're talk show hosts on a show called The Talk. If you can't talk about this incredibly important issue in the country, then shut the show down. Be done with it. Call it the non-talk, the quiet. Okay, so and look, and the reason I want them to have a talk is not just for their own sake, but for our sake. So why do I say that? Now, obviously, Sharon Osbourne felt comfortable, if those sources are correct, and there are multiple sources, including her former co-host, comfortable calling people slanty eyes and ghetto, and obviously she grew up and lived in a context where being overtly racist to others was not that big a deal. Because look, guys, let's say that they were really close friends and they knew each other for 40 years and they joke with each other and they razz each other. That's a totally different context. And then that way, hey, look, he said that, but I don't mind, man. I say the thing right back at him, right? That's a different context. In this context, Holly Robinson Pete minded a lot. And then they removed her from the show, right? They were not fast friends who were just joking around with each other. No, this was said apparently in a derogatory fashion. And so Sharon Osbourne appears to be made incredibly uncomfortable with not her opinions, but the fact that her opinions were exposed. Well, then maybe there's something wrong with your opinions. At least you think that. That's why you're so uncomfortable. Either defend the opinions or realize that they're not so great, opinions or statements, etc. And guys, look, we have two different generations here. We have an older generation, and a lot of them are wonderful and progressive and have evolved, or some of them never had to evolve, right? But a lot of them grew up in a world that was filled to the rim with racism and sexism, and they find it common. And they find it so common that they're offended when you challenge it. They're like, what? It's normal. It's normal. Yeah, I slapped a waitress in the ass. That's what we all do, right? No, and then you have a new generation that says, don't slap me on the ass, and don't call me slanty eyes. And then don't go cry on me when I say, hey, could you not say the racist thing? And those cultures are constantly clashing. And that's what's happening in America right now. And the older generation feels so put upon that they can't do something that they used to do. And guys, it's not just about age, obviously, right? And that culture seeps into the younger generation, and the younger generation's culture also seeps into the older generation. And like I said, there's a great variety within those. I'm using, generalized talk here, if I'm allowed, Sharon. Okay, to give you a sense of that phenomenon that's going on. And what I want, which apparently no one else in the country wants, is for those two groups to get together and talk it through. I want the group that's concerned about racism to hear out the other side so that we can understand what they're thinking and maybe even help them. I want the other side to be open to why people are offended, why it's hurting them so much, and maybe that we could help them instead of attacking, right? Or feeling attacked. But I know it's too much to ask for. Something simple that could actually heal us in a show called The Talk would be great, wouldn't it? On the other hand, it's TV.
Yep. All right, another similar story about jobs ending, maybe not ending, being in jeopardy, and developments on those. We have an update from a previous story that we reported on earlier. All right, here we go. Alexi McCammond is a reporter who kind of came up in politics and was about to take a job as editor-in-chief at Teen Vogue. And then once she was hired, people who worked at the publication remembered some tweets that she had tweeted when she was 17 years old. They resurfaced, and there was an open letter that was written kind of calling out these previous tweets that McCammond tweeted when she was 17. And while McCammond was supposed to start her job as editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue this next Wednesday, the development is that McCammond has resigned before she even had a chance to start. So here is a statement from an executive at Condé Nast, which is the parent company of Teen Vogue. After speaking with Alexi this morning, we agreed that it was best to part ways so as not to overshadow the important work happening at Teen Vogue. Stan Duncan, the chief people officer, sure that's a term, at Condé Nast said in the email, which was obtained by the New York Times. In a statement included in the email, Ms. McCammond, according to the New York Times, said her past tweets have overshadowed the work I've done to highlight the people and issues that I care about. I wish the talented team at Teen Vogue the absolute best moving forward. And just to kind of remind you what's going on, it says resurfaced tweets included comments on the appearance of Asian features, derogatory stereotypes about Asians, and slurs for gay people. So there's a couple more factors that might have contributed to this decision from McCammond, who wasn't fired, but it says she resigned. But first, face value, Cenk, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't like it at all. So there's a giant conversation about cancel culture, and 90% of it is nonsense. But there is a 10% that's real, and I think this is in that 10%. Let me just quickly explain the 90% that's nonsense. Oh, you just want to cancel a cop for being racist, man? No, that's firing someone because they maybe shot someone who's unarmed based on their race. That's called accountability. That's not cancel culture. Okay. You called me racist, man. You shouldn't be allowed to say that. No, that's just more speech. So that's not cancel culture. But this person, let's keep it real, is getting removed from her job. They put a nice face to it by saying she resigned, and I guarantee you there was some money exchanged so that everybody's cool and doesn't attack each other right afterwards, right? So that's the reality of the business world, especially in media. But she is basically removed from her job for things she said when she was a teenager. Now, are the things bad? Yes, we read them to you on a previous show, and they were anti-Asian, anti-gay. We're 1,000,000,000% against that. Obviously, she was 17 in some of the comments and 18 in the others. So look, did Teen Vogue hire her because she was hot in the news? Like she had gotten this the relationship with a Biden staffer, and there was a big hubbub over that, and her name got big, and she's 27 years old, and so they decided they were going to do this hire. Now you got issues inside Teen Vogue because you don't think she has enough experience. Have the courage to talk about that, okay? So, but in this case, it was some staffers who came out and said, we don't like what she said when she was a teenager, and we never talked to her. We never heard her out. We never heard whether she changed her mind in the ensuing 10 years. We don't know if she's being real in it when she's being contrite, right? Or she's faking it. We didn't bother checking. She said something a decade ago. She's guilty and should be removed from her job. That's cancel culture. But I want you to understand why this happened. It didn't happen because of the 20 staffers. That's what precipitated. That's what started it. But no, 2 advertisers pulled out, and corporations control most of media. So when the advertisers pull out, that's it, you're done. They're the ones that actually cancel people. And as a progressive, by the way, I'm not happy to have that kind of corporate control over media. And that's exactly what happens with mainstream media. As soon as any advertiser says, you better not, right or wrong, that person is gone. And so understand that this has a lot of nuance.
Yeah, for sure. There's a couple things that go into it. It was Burt's Bees and Ulta Beauty, which are huge. Those are 2 cosmetics companies essentially that are huge for Teen Vogue. But there was another aspect of it that, and also with the anti-Asian tweets, the nature of that, some of the analysis coming out is that in a time of heightened anti-Asian, rhetoric and it resulting in actual violence against Asian Americans and Asian people in America. Yes, those are all the factors that are going into that too. And as Wozni pointed out, when we first reported on this story, like she was 17, and it wasn't just that she was 17, it was 10 years ago when this was the essential equivalent of like DMing someone. Like there hadn't been stories 10 years ago of maybe, and I think it was 2008, 2009, something like that. I don't know, but like there hadn't really been those stories about the person who took the flight, who was a PR rep and said something that was terrible against people in Africa, and by the time she landed, she lost her job. Like that hadn't really permeated the zeitgeist where you thought to yourself, what I do on Twitter, I'm going to be held responsible for. Not to mention when you're 17, like that's going to be a mitigating circumstance for me, the age. And
100%.
And then another mitigating circumstance is Condé Nast was encountering was the fact that the editor-in-chief of Bon Appetit recently, I don't know if it was the editor-in-chief, but a high-ranking person at Bon Appetit came under fire and had to go because there was a photo that surfaced of him essentially dressing as though he was Puerto Rican in a very like the brown face kind of way. And he lost his job as a result of that. And it wasn't just that photo; it was a pattern reportedly of poor treatment to people of color in the business. So that's also something that's circling. But cross-reference that to the fact that Anna Wintour herself vetted the Alexi McCammon and the level of confidence they had that coming off her reporting in other areas, she was qualified to do this. She was a young, strong voice that they were hiring to make this continue this turn for Teen Vogue, becoming kind of a more political voice than just quizzes about like whether you're sexually compatible with someone in your class.
Yeah. So look, if all these situations are different, if you treat them the same, that's anti-intellectual, right? So if somebody's having questionable conduct towards minorities on their staff, as the allegation in Bon Appetit is, if that allegation is true, well, then that's a no-brainer. Of course you can't do that. Then of course he's got to go, right? So that's not 10 years ago. That's not when you were a teenager. That's now. That's how you're treating employees now, if the allegations are true. Okay, so obviously context matters, right? Look, the Asian American crime now is outrageous, and we've railed against it on this show, obviously, right? That's the most obvious thing in the whole wide world. And her comments were bad. And in 2009, you should have known better than to be anti-Asian or anti-gay. It's not like it was like, 1959, we didn't know you were, that half of us were gay. We didn't know you weren't supposed to be anti-gay, right? Look, that's not a great excuse in 1959 either, but it's definitely not a good excuse in 2009. So we all understand that. But she was 17. My point with that is, can we have any redemption? Can we have anyone ever changing their minds? Or if you ever say anything bad in your life, are you permanently canceled with no possibility of revocation? And you know me, and we've gone through this on many topics. No, that's not what I believe. And I don't think that's a progressive position at all. To say no, I don't even want to hear you. I don't want to hear if you changed. I don't want to hear your opinion. You said it when you were 17, I'm done with you. I can't stand that. That is cancel culture. I think it's terrible. And in terms of the advertising, I mean, look, corporations now have chief people officer. We have found people, okay? And we will now make officers of them. All right, anyway, the reason I bring you that is, I tell you that is because corporations, the advertisers, are the ones that sanitize all the media. Now, you could say, well, I like this sanitized version because they're sanitizing out, if you believe this and you think she hasn't changed her mind, a racist or somebody homophobic. But they also sanitize out all anti-corporate messages. They sanitize in all the status quo is great, status quo is great. Keep buying, don't change anything, don't change the system. So if you're okay with corporate sponsors deciding what is allowed to be talked about on air and who can and cannot participate in that conversation, I think you should be careful with that decision, because I think that's a bad decision that's going to wind up hurting good, honest people, and especially progressives, way more than you realize. So I'm asking for a conversation and for people to be fair. I don't know if it's too much of an ask. But that's where we are now, where generally speaking, both sides just yell at each other and never actually want to talk it through.
And it's so difficult to tell the difference. Like, I mean, when all the Me Too stuff was going on, I was on Pop Trigger and I just kept talking about ethics math, and it's helpful. I have to do the ethics math. I have to be like, these things are all different. Like, so you talk about like sponsors pulling out. Sponsors pulled out of, sponsors decided, corporate companies decided they're going to support Colin Kaepernick over the NFL. They decided to pull out of Condé Nast and supporting Teen Vogue. That's the same activity, which is a sponsor making a decision, but they're for different reasons and under different circumstances. And a lot of people who try to play the like, you're a hypocrite game without fixing anything. This is what my big pet, it's worse than a pet peeve. It's like a cancerous instinct, is where calling out a hypocrisy is a destination. And it isn't that you need to prove it. It's that you just need to say you're a hypocrite and not really prove it out, because people who are watching various influencers of different camps are just looking for someone to confidently say that the other side sucks. But if they're earnest and they really want to have the conversation, I can tell you the way that Alexi McCammon's tweets when she was a teenager are bad, but not as bad in terms of like something on the internet weighing on my interpretation of whether someone's an honest actor or not, as the sheriff's spokesperson who recently tweeted as a grown-ass man, I got the China t-shirts, the China virus t-shirts. Those are different. Those are both bad tweets, but there is a difference there. And if you're gonna be an honest actor, and that's all I want, like I get so frustrated with so much of it. So many people out there just trying to get folks to, there's folks on the right that all they do is try to absolve white dudes of responsibility for anything in exchange for Patreon dollars. And that's it. That's not a destination. You're not trying to fix anything. That's just trying to make people feel good. In this situation, like what I want, I think Alexi McCammon has been through a lot. Like, we have a quote from Charles Barkley about Alexi McCammon, who said, "I don't hit women, but if I did, I would hit you." Alexi McCammon was also in that story this year about the Biden guy who was theoretically dating her and said, "I will end you if you bring this up to anyone else." Like, it's just like, oh my God, like, how does this have any effect on her work? And not just her work. Like, maybe she writes a good article, but those articles that she's writing are well executed and well researched. And when she says in her apology and her qualifying statements after she apologized, and as she goes and reportedly went to different breakout sessions within Condé Nast, was like, "I was 17, I've apologized. Here's 10 articles I've done and 10 examples of work that I've done to kind of prove to you that I'm better than I was." Like, I'm more inclined to believe her than I am to believe the guy who not only said that, you should pick up this China virus t-shirt, but also said, he had a bad day when he shot a bunch of people, like that kind of stuff. Like, it's just a different conversation and people aren't having it.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what else is something you can get canceled over? Being too judgmental. So how about we cancel the judgmental people and get corporations to fire all of them? Right. So you have to use your mind and logic when you do judgment, okay? Like Brett said, like I said, when you do it with cops, it makes sense because they hold power over people and they're currently doing it. When you do it about something that somebody said when they were 17 and they don't have a time machine, they can't go back and fix it other than the actions that they have shown to fix it. She's African American too. You don't know what she's been through. You know how you find out? You talk to her. You don't preemptively fire her. So yeah, there's no question this is cancel culture. And I'll tell you one other thing. There's people on the left that participate in the cancel culture that then say, okay, then if you stand up for anyone who's been fired, we're gonna try to cancel you too. Come at me, bro. Okay, so no, we gotta stand up for people. And so that's what we do at TYT. So if you don't like it and you think, no, anyone who's ever disagreed with me for a nanosecond in their life, even when they were a zygote, I'm canceling them. Okay, well, we don't agree. So, and we're gonna have the courage to stand up for our positions. And so if you wanna say, oh, you guys have that courage and I don't like it, and so I wanna ban you, well, have at it, Hoss, give it your best shot. Go find our tens and tens of thousands of paying subscribers and get them to all change their mind. Whatever the hell you wanna do, okay? But we're gonna state the truth, okay? We're gonna fight back against the monsters on the right. And at the same time, we are going to be fair and we're going to look for justice. So if you like it, great, then you come join us. If you don't like it and you want injustice, whether you're on the right or the left, that's your goddamn problem. Okay, that's my opinion.
Yep. All right, we're out of time.
Okay. Yes, I'll leave you with this quote that Imitation Asian wrote in on YouTube Super Chat. He said that I might like it. He was right, I do. It's from Dr. Jose Rizal. He says, quote, I don't see why I should bow my head when I could hold it high or place it in the hands of my enemies when I can defeat them. You're right, I loved it. We'll see you tomorrow.